Number 5. Otero County Courthouse, New Mexico. In the quiet corners of Alamogordo, New Mexico, I swear I looked that up, lies the Otero County Courthouse, a place where the line between the living and the spectral seems to blur. Those who labor within its walls have stories that chill the very marrow of one's bones. An entity from the, depths of the past, seemingly from the early 1900s, tends to emerge from the shadows. Witnesses have reported sightings of this specter, donned in a timeless suit that echoes an era long past. But it's not just apparitions that haunt this courthouse. It's the inexplicable phenomena that defies the laws of physics. Doors, once left ajar, abruptly close of their own volition, and objects, seemingly devoid of reason, plummet to the ground. Surveillance cameras bore witness to the eerie descent of a donation jar in a bowl on an x-ray machine, casting aside any doubts of, a natural explanation. It went from being, there to and there was nobody there. For the courthouse's, beleaguered employees, such occurrences are far from isolated incidents. They become the unsettling rhythm of daily life. When the donation jar defies gravity's grasp and crashes, echoing in the empty halls, it serves as a reminder that here, the ordinary has become the extraordinary. One tale recounted by a brave employee takes us into the restroom, where the mundane transitions into the uncanny. While standing alone, she felt an invisible hand tugging at her hair, a sensation that defies rational explanation. In that moment, the solitude of the restroom was shattered by an unseen presence, a ghostly interloper if you will. Maintenance man Kenneth Schaefer, no stranger to the courthouse's peculiarities, speaks of doors that defy logic. They stand ajar, only to slam shut as if guided by an unseen hand. A stroll through the courtroom can send shivers down one's spine, as an unexplainable chill pierces through their very being, as if the air itself bears the weight of restless spirits. The history of the Otero County Courthouse is steeped in the echoes of the past. A modern structure completed in 1956, it stands upon the remnants of an earlier courthouse, constructed between 1901 and 1903. But it's the specter of a troubled soul from the 1960s or 70s that lingers, a man who chose to end his own life. His presence, or perhaps his torment, has seeped into the very foundations of that place. In the courthouse, the veil between the corporeal and the ethereal grows very, very thin. Number 4. Eloise Asylum. Eloise Psychiatric Hospital was a large complex located in Westland, Michigan that operated from 1839 to early 1982. It started out as a poorhouse and farm. It eventually developed into an asylum, sanatorium, and hospital. It's had a lot of names over the years, so bear with me here. In 1832, it was called the Wayne County Poorhouse. In 1872, it was the Wayne County Almshouse, while in 1886, it was referred to simply as the Wayne County House. In 1913, there were 3 divisions: the Eloise Hospital, which housed the mental hospital, the Eloise Infirmary or the poorhouse, and the Eloise Sanatorium, which housed patients with tuberculosis, and all 3 were collectively called Eloise. Oh, and that's not the end of the name changes. In 1945, it was named Wayne County General Hospital and Infirmary at Eloise, Michigan. By 1974, it had 2 divisions, separating the Wayne County Psychiatric Hospital from the General Hospital. In 1979, it was officially called Wayne County General Hospital, with the psychiatric division closing in 1982. In its heyday, Eloise was made up of 78 buildings on 902 acres with 10,000 patients along with 2,000 staff, serving as the largest psychiatric facility in the entire United States. Only the firehouse, power plant, commissary, and D buildings still stand as of July of 2023, as well as the cemetery. It had some good things back in the day, housing the first kidney dialysis unit in the state of Michigan and pioneering the use of music therapy. Staff also used hydrotherapy, shock therapy, and insulin therapy to treat patients. As years went on, the institution grew larger and larger, a reflection in the increases in the population of the Detroit area. From only 35 residents in 1839, the complex grew to, like I said, about 10,000 folks at its peak during the Great Depression. Now to talk about ghosties. My favorite part. Numerous typical poltergeist activities have been witnessed within the complex, with doors slamming and medical carts and tables being overturned. Generally speaking, there are shadow figures that seemingly drip from the ceilings and ooze from the walls of this place, becoming part of the building itself until they're one and the same. 2 ghostly little ones have been seen running through the paint-peeling walls of the hallways, turning a corner only to disappear. It's assumed they were inmates at the time Eloise was a poorhouse, where orphans often lived until they were adopted out or passed away. So these 2 possibly died in their youth, or maybe they relive their lives now without the fear they had when they were alive, carelessly playing games in a kind of purgatory. There's a mysterious lady that appears as a white vapor and has been seen manifesting within one of the buildings that still stand, and her voice has been recorded as she whispers, Help me. Another ghost is that of a doctor, said to prowl the halls of the crumbling facility. Even in the afterlife, he searches for an unfortunate patient to practice his scientific methods. Some have reported seeing a specter drenched in water, possibly a reminder of when hydrotherapy was coming into practice. Other times the ghostie is seen wearing a smock stained in red, presumed to be from a lobotomy. Possibly he lingers here, tormented by the ghosts of the patients upon whom he practiced. Nowadays this building is home to two different escape rooms, one titled The Heist and the other is aptly called Escape the Asylum. If you feel like risking the wrath of the ghosts, that's on you. Number 3. Navajo County Courthouse in Arizona. Within the haunted tales of American courthouses, the old Navajo County Courthouse emerges as a sinister enigma, where the spirit of George Smiley is said to linger. Smiley's grim fate was sealed when he faced a death sentence for the killing of a railroad foreman, a crime that would shroud the courthouse in an unsettling legacy. Sheriff Frank Watron's macabre sense of humor cast an eerie pall over Smiley's impending execution. He dispatched gilded invitations for the hanging, a grotesque spectacle set for November 11th of 1899. But this twisted jest proved too much for the sensibilities of President McKinley and Governor Nathan Murphy, who swiftly reprimanded Watron, postponing the execution. In response, the sheriff issued another set of invitations, this time veiled in mournful language and adorned with a black border, signaling the ultimate demise of George Smiley on January 8th of 1900. But, the story doesn't end with Smiley's execution. According to a column in the Examiner, the old courthouse now houses the local historical society, but its halls are far from quiet. Eerie noises reverberate throughout the building, and objects move of their own accord, as if guided by unseen hands. It is here that these spectral roommates, including George Smiley and Sheriff Watron himself, are said to coexist in the realm of the beyond, their presence an enduring enigma. Far from the dusty trails of Navajo County, the Lincoln County Courthouse in Wiscasset, Maine, harbors its own spectral mysteries. In 2011, the courthouse was thrown into a state of disquiet when a motion-sensitive security camera captured eerie footage. County Commissioner Sheridan Bond, armed with a magnifying glass, scrutinized a still frame from the recording, believing he could see a spectral visage within the mysterious entity. Others, although uncertain about the existence of a face, agreed that the camera unequivocally captured something that we can't explain. Oh, the eerie occurrences doesn't end there. That's way too easy. Workers in the district attorney's office have reported sightings of a shadowy figure, manifesting in the late afternoon and early evening, casting a chilling pall over the courthouse. WCSH, the local station, embarked on a quest to, unveil the identity of the entity haunting the courthouse. However, their efforts yielded no definitive answers. The enigma persists, shrouded in the mists of time and history. The courthouse itself, with its origins dating back to 1824, has borne witness to a multitude of souls, some incarcerated, others executed, their stories etched into the very walls of the building. Number 2. Transylvania University. It's a private university in Lexington, Kentucky that was founded in 1780 and was the first university in the state. Transylvania's name, meaning across the woods in Latin, stems from the university's founding in the heavily forested region of western Virginia known as the Transylvania Colony, which existed briefly between 1775 and 76 in south and western Kentucky. I promise I'm not about to tell another vampire or Dracula story, I swear. Granted, if y'all would eventually like me to talk, ad nauseum about vampires, let me know in the comments because that's something I feel like I could chat about for hours. So the oldest university west of the Allegheny Mountains, TU is home to the tomb of Constantine Rafinesque, a terribly unpopular botany professor who also served as a French and Italian tutor, and had quite the affair with the college president's wife before being banished. Angry and bitter, legend has it that he cast a spell on the university as he left town and died of yellow fever, and now his ghost still haunts its grounds. Students have reported seeing the ghost of a student who allegedly took their own life, and a male who would stand at the foot of their bed and vanish before their eyes. That's not exactly anything I want to see when I'm trying to sleep. Just me? Number 1. Mitchell Courthouse in Baltimore. In the corridors of the Clarence M. Mitchell Jr. Courthouse, nestled in Baltimore, Maryland, a spectral presence is said to roam an apparition of historical significance. Supreme Court Justice Roger B. Taney, infamous for the polarizing, Dred Scott decision, is believed to be the source of the unexplained phenomena that has unnerved those who tread upon this hallowed legal ground. Attorney Adam Sean Cohen's harrowing experience within these haunted walls serves as a testament to the otherworldly ambiance that permeates the courthouse. So during a court proceeding, Cohen was gripped by an inexplicable dread, likening the sensation to the frigid aura of a grocery store's frozen food section, where the coldness surrounds you while warmth beckons from within. Overwhelmed by this uncanny sensation, Cohen abruptly left the courtroom, decision unimaginable in normal circumstances, as judges are typically treated with the utmost, respect, as judges are typically treated with the utmost respect. Circuit Judge Wanda Keyes Heard, presiding over the proceedings, showed a remarkable understanding of Cohen's abrupt exit. She herself believes that the courthouse is under the spectral watch of justice, that has passed, whose name I don't want to bugger up again. This belief is underscored by the presence of, the name etched upon the dome of the courthouse, a chilling reminder of the historical legacy that lingers. Heard, a descendant of those who endured the dark days of, bad things, humorously speculated that this guy might harbor some reservations about her role in the legal proceedings. However, a curious twist emerges when the courthouse's historian sheds light on the situation. While this ghostly presence is rumored to haunt the courthouse, historical records reveal a peculiar detail. The esteemed justice was never actually inside the courthouse during his lifetime. The courthouse itself was constructed in 900, long after this man's passing in 1864. Instead, it was a neighboring building, now demolished, where this presence resided, a location that has seemingly left quite the mark on the surrounding area. The spectral enigma of the courthouse serves as a chilling reminder that history has a peculiar way of transcending time and place. This justice's ghostly presence, though physically distant from the courthouse itself, continues to cast its ethereal shadow over the legal proceedings that unfold within its walls. It's a testament to the enduring influence of the past, one that defies the constraints of time and logic, leaving those who dare to enter these haunted halls with an unsettling sense of history's weight. Number 5. Gettysburg College. Gettysburg College, which is a 4-year undergraduate liberal arts institution, is well known for its strong academics as well as its reputation of having one of the most haunted campuses in America. The college was founded in 1832, prior to the Civil War, and boasts numerous ghostly legends. John, a student who graduated in 2004, has spoken out about an encounter he had in 2003 when he was working as a secretary in Penn Hall, saying that he took the elevator, and when it opened, there was a full working Civil War hospital in the basement, with lights, people walking around working, and soldiers. All he was able to do was stare as the doors closed, and when they opened the next time, it was a regular basement. So Penn Hall, being the oldest building on campus, was built in, 1832, and actually served as a hospital for wounded soldiers as well as a morgue during the 1863 Battle of Gettysburg. The hospital is described as having been extremely gruesome, and soldiers were often fully conscious during their ghastly operations. According to a story found in Mark V. Nesbitt's Ghosts of Gettysburg, John is not the only one to have witnessed this scene. 2 campus administrators in the 1980s took the elevator down to the basement and were unexpectedly met with the views of gruesomely injured patients. I'll pass in that basement, mostly because I've always been creeped out by them, but this isn't the only haunted building on this campus. Stevens Hall, which was built in 1911, was originally used as a prep school for girls who would later enter the college, and is allegedly the most haunted dormitory on campus. One year, hockey player Amanda Schlager was the only person living in Stevens Hall before the semester started, and would often hear footsteps down the hall and above her, but when she looked around the next day, there was no one else in the dorm. So while you might be able to write off that instance as a simple prank, that's not the only ghostly take from that building. This building is famous for being haunted by a ghost named the Blue Boy. The legend claims that one freezing winter night, a few girls snuck an orphan into their room to help him stay warm. When a house mother unexpectedly came in, they shoved him onto the 3rd-story window ledge to hide him. But when they went back to let him in, he was nowhere to be seen. It was never clear what happened to him, but the apparition of his blue face pressed against the window, as well as strange noises throughout the dorm, have horrified residents ever since. And finally, there's been some one-off instances of spooky encounters in Huber Hall as well. Other students have described ghostly encounters in their first-year dormitories. One woke up one night to a pressure on her chest and heard someone dragging across the floor. She closed her eyes, and when she opened them, every single item on her and her roommates' desks had been thrown onto the floor. Years later, someone who lived in that exact same room experienced a night where his alarm clock reset itself during the night and was blaring the alarm even after the student pulled it out of the wall. I can handle a decent amount of ghost behavior, but I like my sleep too much for that. My first roommate can vouch for the fact that I will growl at anyone who wakes me up. From experience. Number 4, Monroe County Courthouse in Arkansas. The Monroe County Courthouse, a seemingly innocuous edifice, conceals a sinister past that continues to haunt its halls to this day. In the year 1898, the courthouse bore witness to a gruesome racial killing that birthed the malevolent spirits that now reside within. Ghost Eyes, the, harbinger of the eerie, divulges stories of mournful cries emanating from its basement, serving as a chilling reminder of that fateful day. What transpired here was a harrowing sequence of events that shook the very foundation of this community. The roots of this macabre tale stretch back to the troubled household of John and Mabel Orr, where domestic discord festered like a dark omen. John, an actor by profession, was rumored to have subjected his wife Mabel to unspeakable cruelty, igniting violent clashes that punctuated their marriage. However, On that fateful August 5th, fate would deliver a gruesome twist. An unknown assailant shattered the tranquility of their home, taking John's life in a horrifying manner through the kitchen window. Rumors swirled like malevolent spirits, suggesting Mabel's complicity in her husband's demise, intertwined with the ominous presence of voodoo. As the shadows deepened, Mabel's fate took a sinister turn. Mabel, ensnared by the tendrils of guilt and despair, chose to end her own life, poisoning herself in the bleak confines of the courthouse's basement jail. But the horrors were far from over. 4 servants of the Orr family, Mance Castle, Will Sanders, Rilla Weaver, Sanders' mother, and Dennis Rickard, found themselves incarcerated alongside the tormented spirit of Mabel. The abyss of human darkness consumed them as a meticulously organized mob descended upon the jail, snatching these souls from their mortal coil on August 9th. The maid, Susie Jacobs, also met her gruesome end at the hands of this merciless assembly. The Encyclopedia of Arkansas History and Culture recounts the grim spectacle of Mabel's lifeless form, put on grisly display within the courthouse, serving as a grim testament that she had not escaped her tormentors. The courthouse, once a symbol of justice, now stands as a malevolent sentinel, guarding the secrets of that gruesome summer. Number 3. New York University. Knowing now that so many old universities are extremely haunted, I'm kinda glad I went to a fairly new place for my education, since I'm kinda susceptible to ghosts and whatnot. Kicking this school off with the most famous haunted building, Brittany Residence Hall. Allegedly, when Brittany used to be a hotel, a student named Molly died in the elevator and continues to haunt the space, and specifically her elevator. A former student named Claire was the unfortunate recipient of Molly's wrath when attempting to return home very late one night. She entered the cursed elevator, and when it got to the 8th floor, the elevator shook and dropped, and stopped on the 5th floor. No one had called the elevator, so it stayed there for a minute, the doors opened, closed, and then it went down to the 2nd floor like nothing had happened. And she's not alone in her tale. I found many similar tales across the internet today, and elevator technicians don't have any kind of practical reasoning for the elevator's wrongdoings. Over in Gramercy Green Residence Hall, a student named Hillary woke up one night in her dorm to the sight of a pale figure next to her bed, and originally assumed it was her roommate rummaging about, until she saw her roommate sleeping in her own bed out of the corner of her eye, and the spirit was still lingering. Thankfully, she didn't do anything to anger the spirit, but simply turned her back towards the ghost, put her comforter over her head, and managed to go back to sleep. Founders Residence Hall is home to strange noises, creaks, doors opening on their own, and lights that turn off and on, but also change settings on their own. It sounds like the classrooms may be safe for this university, but maybe stay off campus and not in residence to be certain. Number 2. Daxa County Courthouse in Arkansas. So, nestled in the heart of Arkansas City, this courthouse holds a spectral secret that has intrigued ghost hunters and courthouse workers alike. Here, the haunting presence of a ghost known as Willard weaves its haunting tapestry throughout the building, defying the bounds of human logic. Local legend intertwines with the supernatural in a tale that centers around the courthouse's clock tower. An unsettling belief holds that the clock, perched high in its tower, has been cursed since the turn of the 20th century. The curse, it is said, was cast by a condemned man who met his grisly end on the courthouse lawn. The alleged arson of a string of hotels, a charge he vehemently denied. In a curious twist, County Judge Mark McElroy once made a campaign promise to mend the clock, as reported by, the local Gazette. However, the appointed clock technician, tasked with repairing the timepiece, dispelled the supernatural aura surrounding it. In his words, back in the old days, they probably did hang somebody out there on the front of the courthouse, or on the steps of the courthouse, or up in the tower of the courthouse, or whatever. I don't dispute that one bit, and the guy may have cursed them on the clock, but that's not the problem with the clock. It's just an old clock, and it needs tender loving care. All of them are that way. Alright, pal. The cryptic saga of the county courthouse embodies the confluence of folklore, history, and the supernatural. Willard's ghostly presence lingers, a reminder that even in the realm of the mundane, the boundaries between fact and legend can blur. Whether it's a cursed clock or the echoes of a tragic past, the courthouse stands as a testament to the enduring mysteries that shroud these haunted halls. Number 1. Marblehead Schools in Hellmouth. Okay, technically nowadays the town goes by Marblehead, but that name had me doing a double take. With my love of Buffy, I've been led to believe my entire life that a major hellmouth was in Sunnydale, California, not Massachusetts. The definition of a hellmouth is a property representing the entrance of Hades. So the middle school girls' locker room in this school is rumored to be haunted by a man that passed away in a motorcycle accident. Reports indicate that the high school was built on an ancient burial ground, and eyewitnesses can attest they have seen poltergeists, apparitions, orbs, a gray lady, and the mystique of not being wanted roams across the hallways. Maintenance records claim that the elevators in the schools don't work properly, and the building's fire alarms randomly go off. There are also reports of UFO sightings in Marblehead's middle school, but they've been mostly scrubbed from the internet. I swear I tried to find them. Number 5, Mamy Manor. Alrighty, before someone yells at me, yes, this place does market themselves as a haunted house, or to quote the founder Russ, a survival horror performance house. But since they're currently offering 20 grand to anyone who can survive 10 hours of their games, I'm considering them eligible for today's list. Granted, if you curse or fail a challenge, $500 gets removed each time. And I've also had a personal vendetta against them for about 10 years now, and that's about to come into play. So founder Russ Mamy, a former Navy seaman turned haunted attraction enthusiast, doesn't accept any kind of money for this unique experience. Payment is simply, a can or a bag of dog food. There is a screening process first. Participants must produce a doctor's note, sign a 40-page waiver, pass a background check and test, and be screened via FaceTime. A guide has testified that the 40-page waiver signed by participants lists possible risks, which include having teeth extracted, being tattooed, and having fingernails removed. If I didn't already hate the place enough, that does it for me. That's just unnecessary torment. It originally operated in San Diego, but neighbors petitioned to have it run out of the area due to the noise and unsafe attention it brought them, and were successful. There's a total of 3 locations now: Nashville, Tennessee, and Huntsville, Alabama. At the Tennessee location, guests must be 21 or older, or 18 to 20 with parental consent, while the Alabama location only allows ages 21 or up. The tour lasts from 8 to 10 hours, but no guest has made it all the way through. Mamy originally did not allow safe words for the tour, but has since reportedly allowed them, with guests having the option to use a safe word that ends the experience immediately. The house operates year-round, and there is allegedly a waiting list of over 24,000 people. I just want to know why. During the experience, employees of the manor may physically attack patrons, waterboard them, force them to eat and drink unknown substances, have them bound and gagged, and engage in other forms of physical and psychological anguish. I'm forgetting something. Don't remind me. Oh yeah, participants may also be during their experience. And hey, if that wasn't enough ick for anyone, make sure to smile for the camera while you're enduring this hell. Yeah, Mamy started filming everything that happened inside as an insurance policy, so he'd have proof of what really happened anytime law enforcement came knocking. Nowadays, each contestant's experience is live streamed to a Facebook audience of close to 30,000 people. If that's your idea of entertainment, there's a large archive of footage on the official website. So far, no one's been able to escape, and I'm pretty sure everyone leaves with some sort of imprint on their psyche, so big pass from me. Number 4, R.H. King Academy. So this academy, also known as RHKA or King, is formerly also known as Scarborough High School. Scarborough Collegiate Institute and R.H. King Collegiate Institute is a secondary school located in Scarborough, Toronto, Ontario, as part of the Toronto District School Board. This school was established in 1922 and then became a collegiate in 1930, renamed in 1954 and again in 1989, so it's had a bit of a complex. Fun fact, it was the first secondary school built in Scarborough, and boy oh boy is it home to some spirits. To my knowledge, ghosties have been observed in many areas in the school, and I think I'll start with one of the most common ghost locations, the school library. So a former vice principal recalled seeing something move through the book stacks when he was all alone in the library after school and swore to never be alone in that library ever again. Other teachers have discussed seeing weird shapes out of the corners of their eyes, expecting a rogue student, but no one was there. At the main entrance to the library, there are scanners that go off to count the number of people going in and coming out, and they tend to go off at least once a day with no rhyme or reason. Keeping with the book theme, let's move on to the English department book room. It used to be the second floor stands for Gym 3, a place where students could watch various sporting events, but was repurposed to fit the changing needs of the school. My old high school got rid of its library to keep up with changing needs, so it's healing my soul a little bit knowing not all schools are like that. Several years ago, a former teacher was alone in the building, and as she was leaving the book room, she heard the sound of a ball bouncing coming from Gym 3. But when she went to investigate the noises, she found the gym vacant and engulfed in darkness, and didn't hear any sounds that could have been anyone running away really quickly to not get in trouble. And the final book-related room before we move on to other places, the Heritage Room located on the D floor is suspected to be home to some residents. When the school was first built, the Heritage Room served as the library, but when the new library on B floor opened in 1975, the room was left vacant. Some students report a feeling of being watched when they enter the room alone, while others report smelling a woman's perfume in one specific spot of the room and not finding the smell again once they walk away. Many even report feeling poked or tapped on their backs and not being able to find the cause. One theory is that an old librarian spirit still lies in that room today, watching over the students, which makes sense and is kind of sweet. The other has to do with the staircase behind the room, where allegedly a caretaker met an early end. Whether he took his own life or it was a freak accident depends on who you ask. Speaking of spooky hallways, which are a good ghost hiding place, an old boiler room hallway on B floor used to lead to a beautiful ornate auditorium that was torn down to make room for a parking lot. Yeah, it hurt my theatrical soul to say that. While students often use the hallway to exit the school during the day, on multiple occasions, the night shift security has been alerted by motion sensors going off. Upon searching the hallway, they see an open door and hear rattling, but they don't find anybody. Former students have recalled an uncanny feeling while walking down that hallway and even mentioned hearing footsteps behind them. And when they turn around, no one's there. To my knowledge, the most frequent area that ghosts like to hang out in the school is the A-floor War Memorial, which honors students of R.H. King who fought in the Second World War. The most notable encounter happened to a janitor working the 12 to 8 shift in the 90s. At around 4 a.m., as he was walking down that hall, the lights turned off, and when he sat on the ground, he felt someone touch his left shoulder. Suspecting it was another caretaker, he asked them to stop, and immediately the lights came back on. And what do you know? There was no one else around. Traveling over to the seafloor science rooms, another former member of the late-night custodial staff was using a chair to hold open the glass door that led to the stairwell to make her job easier. And after a few minutes, she heard the door close and noticed that the chair had been moved. She didn't think much of it, thinking the chair had just, moved from gravity, so she propped open the door again using the chair and returned to her work. And just a minute later, she heard the door slam again and noticed that the chair had been moved further away from the door, so it wasn't gravity this time. Starting to get more suspicious, she put the chair back in front of the door and again returned to work. But only a few minutes later, she heard a giant crash and saw that the chair had been flung across the hallway and the door was closed. Ah, poltergeists, those mischievous buggers. Gotta love them. Number 3, 13 Seta Avenue. This is the only Canadian entry on today's list, and apparently it's the scariest escape room in the entire greater Toronto area. Time to tell if my courage will kick in and motivate me to go check it out. So rumor has it, everyone who's experienced this particular escape room has experienced some sort of paranormal activity, which could be my cup of tea as long as it doesn't involve a Ouija board or spirits that follow me home. So according to the website, it is described as a group daring to venture through an abandoned house turns into a horrifying nightmare when you quickly realize it's not abandoned at all. So it's just a sick game, and you are the main attraction. You'll have to work together and overcome all the challenges. Watch out, not all groups make it out together. Now here's the haunted element. Some parts of the internet have listed it as running, while the official website changes depending on the day, on if it's still existing or not. Try and register if you dare. Who knows if you'll live to tell the tale. Number 2, Franklin County Historic Jail. Allegedly, the old Franklin County Jail is one of the most haunted locations in south central Pennsylvania and once housed quite the notorious prisoner. 1920s gangster Charlie Berger was held at the Franklin County Jail from June of 1927 to April of 1928, where he went the way of the rope necklace for the death of Joe Adams along with a plethora of other crimes. While he isn't the only ghostie that likes to hang out at the jail, apparently he can be spotted skulking around where he met the end of his time. Overall activity that has been reported includes shadows, mysterious noises, disembodied moans, being physically touched, and feelings of tension in certain areas. Time for a history lesson though. In the early 1700s, the land that would become Franklin County was settled and traveled by Native Americans, including the Iroquois, the Lenape, and the Shawnee. Treaties resulted in the land being settled by the English after the French and Indian War. In 1818, the Franklin County Jail was constructed to house criminals and those condemned to the gallows. The basement was used as a dungeon, where the condemned were often shackled, physically punished, or killed prior to their date with the noose in the courtyard. In 1862, as the nearby shops were all burned, the Franklin Jail remained untouched. The jail escaped damage again when Confederate General Robert E. Lee and 70,000 soldiers took up residence nearby, and once again in 1864, as a significant portion of Chambersburg was burned, the jail remained unscathed. If I had a nickel for everything I just thought was mighty suspicious, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. At least 7 known souls met their end at the gallows, and many more were subjected to inhumane treatment in the basement. Areas known to be haunted in the old prison include the old doctor's office, where spirits are known to recount their tales of poor treatment, the old cells where orbs have a habit of appearing in photos near certain names and dates etched into the walls, but the worst is the tension and cold felt in the basement where so many endured horrors and met their end. Nowadays, folks can get a feel of the life, behind its real prison bars thanks to the escape room on site. Prisoners are locked in the lower jail block cell and have to use puzzle-solving tactics in order to break out. And like most game rooms, they have 60 minutes to escape. Good luck! Number 1, Shepperton Mallet Prison. So this prison is widely recognized as the most haunted prison in the world, and one of the most haunted locations in the UK. It was built in 1610 and became known as the oldest prison in the United Kingdom. Behind its walls, prisoners would frequently die of illnesses because medical treatment was sadly overlooked. Death sentences were frequently carried out, with the latest happening in 1945 under the direct order of the military. So it didn't actually close until 2013, so I think it's the most recently converted location on our list today. In the 1970s, the Home Office was requested to investigate some strange happenings in one of the wings. An increase in prisoners requesting additional bedding due to cold drop was becoming an issue, and the occasional smell of sweet perfume would waft around the prison. Prisoners were becoming uncomfortable in their cells, and officers started to refuse working the night shifts. So the office carried out a 3-day investigation, and the results remained inconclusive. As the years passed, new reports were coming in that the draughts would continue, as would the smell of sweet perfume. Some night officers would report seeing shadows and white figures standing on the stairs. The story of the White Lady was revealed after some research. So she had killed her husband and was brought to the prison for her final days before meeting her end in the town center. The night before her execution, she was offered her final request and asked to wear her wedding dress. The morning of her execution, the door to her cell swung open, and to the surprise of the officers, her lifeless body laid on the bed, dressed in the gown. No marks were found, and it was concluded that she must have died of a broken heart. She is said to still wander the wings and has been reported to be seen on multiple occasions. And if she isn't seen, the smell of a sweet perfume has been reported to linger in the prison wing. So the prison now advertises the escape room as a team building behind bars, where visitors learn the full details of the corrupt events that happened within the prison walls and then try their hand at escaping themselves. Yeah, no thanks.
Number 5. Gettysburg. For Americans, the Battle of Gettysburg is probably one of the more famous battles in your history. It was an incredibly bloody battle that marked a turning point in the war towards the Union, as it was a heavy victory over the Confederacy, halting the moving invasion towards the north. And that's about all the American history I remember from school. Unfortunately though, grand victories come at an impossible cost, and as such, countless lives were lost. Well, not entirely countless. Historians have estimated that the number hovers around 50,000 soldiers killed. With that in mind, with 50,000 lives cut short amidst a torrent of screams, bayonet jabs, musket fire, and cannons blasting off, is it any surprise that some of these tortured souls haven't quite been able to move on just yet? Gettysburg isn't just a place where history comes alive, it's a place where it hasn't quite fully died. The town of Gettysburg is filled with historical tours and ghost tours you can go on, with visitors and locals claiming that just about anywhere you go, you'll find something mysterious happening. Phantom shots, battle cries reverberating out hundreds of years later. One of the more haunted points of interest is the Devil's Den. I mean, obviously, listen to the name. A particularly bouldery stretch of land in Gettysburg that was host to a brutal battle where 5,000 soldiers died alone. Visitors claim that they can see the apparitions of the soldiers still at war. One particularly freaky Gettysburg story that they probably leave out of the history books is the story of Jenny Wade. Jenny Wade was a civilian killed during the Battle of Gettysburg when a stray bullet struck her while she was baking bread. The house where she lived, now known as the Jenny Wade House, is believed to be haunted by her spirit. Visitors and staff have reported hearing footsteps, doors opening and closing on their own, and the aroma of freshly baked bread, all attributed to Jenny's presence. Well, at least there's someone still making food for all those ghostly soldiers. If anyone's ever been down to Gettysburg, let me know if you've ever had a weird experience there. I would love to hear it. And if you're looking for more weird experiences of ghosts and all things supernatural, well, you don't have to book a plane ticket anywhere because you're in exactly the right place already. Make sure you hit subscribe so you can get all the latest on our scary stuff, and ring that little bell as well, and you'll get up-to-date notifications when we upload. But do that at the end of this video, okay? Because I got 4 more scary battlefields coming for you right now. Number 4, Waterloo. The Battle of Waterloo, that's the one in Belgium, not the Kitchener-Waterloo area, was fought in 1815 and was a significant historical event for a few reasons. First and foremost, I think we can all agree the most important thing that came out of the Battle of Waterloo was that it inspired one of ABBA's most time-tested bangers. Secondly, and less important, it was a conflict that ended up ending Napoleon's impressive rule, ending the Napoleonic Wars. Just like the Battle of Gettysburg, this was a brutal battle that claimed the lives of thousands of soldiers on both sides. If you're learning anything from this video, it's that war is not great for the soldiers. One of the most famous ghostly legends associated with the Waterloo battlefields revolves around a spectral little drummer boy. According to the story, visitors and locals have reported hearing the faint sound of a drum being played in the distance, and it's said that this haunting sound resembles a military drummer echoing through the night. Some people claim that they see an apparition dressed in this uniform believed to be the ghost of a young drummer boy who lost his life during the battle. Another ghostly encounter is the soldiers' apparitions. Visitors claim that sometimes you can see shadowy figures dressed in period uniforms, marching across the fields or standing silently as if reliving battles. They're described as fleeting and ethereal, vanishing as soon as they are noticed. Well, you know, maybe ghosts get shy too when they're not ready. As well, Well, visitors to Waterloo battlefields claim that they have felt a profound sense of sadness and unease while walking through the fields and exploring the landmarks. Definitely, I feel like any place like this where you just know how many lives have been lost all in one little stretch of land, that would kind of make me feel some sort of way. Waterloo. Couldn't escape if I wanted to. How right ABBA was. Number 3, the Panang War Museum. I think it's a very good sign that your museum is a friendly, welcoming place. If you Google it and the first results are an article called The Horrors on Ghost Hill and a listing for an IMDb episode for a series called I Wouldn't Go There featuring your museum. It's either really hurting or really helping the tourism there. Well, if those warning signs weren't enough to deter you, enter the Panang War Museum, my little ghouls and goblins. It's been described as one of the most haunted spots in Asia, flat out. The Panang Museum is built atop the grave of an old army fort built by the British in the 1930s, but was taken control by the Japanese in the late 30s in World War II, and used to house prisoners for as long as the prisoners lived, which was usually not very long, if the site of the guillotine is anything to go by. After the end of the Second World War, the place had become totally abandoned, until it was retrofitted to become a museum, and serve as a reminder of the grim reality of war and its costs. The whole place kind of has this eerie, abandoned ghost town vibe as you walk through tunnels and old bunkers, serving to try and replicate what it would be like to actually work and spend time in a place like this while it was functioning. Given the very grim nature of the content and the site itself, which was home to so much bloodshed, death, hatred, and all the worst parts of our souls, it's no surprise that the museum has an infamous reputation as a spot for paranormal activity. Guests have reported seeing strange sightings, unusual shadows, and feeling chills as they walk through the bunkers. But all of this begs the question, would ghosts even be scarier than the actual truth of this place? Now, I've never been, but from what I was looking at and gathering for this, it seems to me like the true horror of the Panang Museum is that it's a reflection of some of the worst parts of the human experience. A reminder of what happens during wartime and what people do to one another. This place doesn't need stories of spirits. It's haunted enough as is by the memories that will forever be tied to it. Number 2, the Borodino Battlefield. The Battle of Borodino was fought on September 7, 1812 during Napoleon's failed invasion of Russia and was one of the grisliest conflicts of the war. Are we surprised that 2 different battlefields from the Napoleonic Wars are considered haunted? I'm not particularly, because that guy invaded a lot of places, and I'm willing to bet that emotions were probably pretty high around him, and I would say the vibe was just probably off. So I'm not surprised that enough emotionally tormented souls have spawned so many ghosts. The village of Borodino is about 70 miles west of Moscow and has a reputation for ghostly legends and reported hauntings. Why don't you pop your ears open and take a listen to some of the stranger things that have come out of the Borodino battlefield. According to local legends, on the right nights, particularly the anniversary of the battle, witnesses claim to hear the sounds of galloping horses and the clash of sabers as the cavalry rushes in. Some people take it a little step further and say they've even seen apparitions of the cavalry charging, as if they're reenacting the battle. You guys can't get over the war. You fought it once already. You don't have to fight it for eternity. You don't have to keep fighting it. It's over. It's done. It happened. There are people too who claim that they've encountered a spectral figure dressed in a white medical coat, believed to be the ghost of a surgeon who worked on the wounded during the battle. Witnesses describe seeing the apparition wandering through the battlefield, appearing and disappearing amidst the ruins and remnants of war. Would absolutely hate to be a ghost surgeon. You're gonna try and repair other ghosts. I don't know if you can do surgery on a ghost. I think that might be for life. I think if you get injured and then turn into a ghost, you're just gonna have to deal with like a big hole in your tummy forever. But I don't know. I'm not a ghost. I wouldn't know. Unlike some of the other entries that I've talked about on this list, there isn't like a huge culture for ghost tours in Borodino. So if you do end up going up near there, you're gonna be on your own looking for the ghosts. But maybe they're just not as spiritual there, or maybe they don't want to talk about it. Maybe they don't want to invite people to come see it. And number 1, Normandy. The battle at Normandy is probably one of the most well-known battles in the history of human armed conflict. You've probably seen it play out in countless movies. You've probably played the invasion in 1,000 video games. June 6th, 1944 was D-Day. the horrifying legendary military operation resulting in an estimate of 20,000 casualties. It was one of the most painful battles of the Second World War, so it is no surprise at all how haunted Normandy is said to be. Now, Omaha Beach is one of the more infamous landing sites during the D-Day invasion. It's said that the spirits of fallen soldiers still linger around in the area. Visitors have reported hearing all the usual haunting sounds, disembodied voices, cries for help, artillery, screams, and again, particularly bold claims say that you can see ghastly apparitions of soldiers on both sides of the conflict still dressed in full uniform. The town of Falaise was the strategic location during the Battle of Normandy, and there have been wild reports of people saying that they see a phantom tank roaming around the streets, claiming that you hear the rumble of tank tracks and witness the apparition of a tank disappearing into thin air. Some believe it represents the spirit of a tank crew lost in the battle. This is a new one for me. I don't know if I've ever heard of a machine ghost. I've heard of people ghosts, definitely, but I've never heard of a tank ghost, and it does make me wonder if can all vehicles be ghosts? Are there car ghosts? Are there plane ghosts? I'm not sure, but I'd love to know. Now, these are just a few examples of the many, many ghostly stories and hauntings associated with Normandy. The region's intense conflict and sacrifices left a sort of permanent mark on the area. You know, it's kind of hard to separate Normandy from that big thing that happened there. So many visitors do report feeling kind of eerie and unexplained when visiting these historic sites. I think you walk around an area like that, you're just thinking about a lot of death. It's definitely on your mind.
In 5th place, we have Isla de las Muñecas, Mexico. So the Island of the Dolls in Mexico is like something straight out of a horror movie, but my kind of horror movie, or a perfect place. Located on Teshuilo Lake, it is home to hundreds of hanging, slowly decaying dolls, thanks to a man named Don Julian Santana. So over 50 years ago, Don Santana left his wife and child and moved onto an island on Teshuilo Lake in the Xochimilco canals. I promise I tried to say it right. Let me know in the comments if I got it wrong. According to him, a young woman actually drowned in the lake in the 1950s, and he devoted his life to honoring this lost soul by collecting and hanging up dolls by the hundreds. Eventually, Don transformed the entire island into a doll-infested wonderland. So he began collecting lost dolls from the canals and the trash near his island home. He's also said to have traded produce he grew to locals for more dolls. But he didn't clean them up or attempt to fix them. He just put them up with missing eyes and limbs, covered in dirt and generally in whatever ramshackle state he found them in. Even when the dolls arrived to him in good shape, the wind and weather turned them into cracked and distorted versions of themselves, which I love. He also kept his cabin filled with dolls, which he dressed in headdresses, sunglasses, and other accessories as need be. So despite the fact that most people found this island frightening, he saw the dolls as beautiful protectors, as he welcomed visitors who he would show around, charging just a small fee for taking photos, just for upkeep and stuff. In 2001, Don Santana was found drowned in the same area in which he believed that a woman had died. So according to legend, the dolls and the island are haunted by the spirits of the dead girl, and perhaps even by, Don himself. Alrighty, so after all that, who wants to go on a road trip with me? Anyone? Look, as long as we leave the dolls alone, I'm sure the curse won't follow us home. Okay, I'm 50% certain, but still. Let's go. In 4th place, we have Lokrum and Daxa in Dubrovnik, Croatia. So both of these places have such dark histories that I couldn't leave either of them out. They work so well together. One of them, Lokrum, is accessible by a regularly scheduled, kinda crowded, taxi boat, whereas the other, Daxa, has no links to the mainland and is actually avoided by locals. So legends and suspicions have surrounded this beautiful island of palm trees and pines since its long-term residents were removed in 1798. So settled on Lokrum since the early around 11th century, and the community of Benedictine monks were evicted by Napoleon's troops. The night before their expulsion, the troops placed a curse on those who usurped the sacred ground. Half a century later, Habsburg Royal Maximilian, the younger brother of the Emperor Franz Joseph, bought Lokrum. He converted the monastery complex into his pleasure gardens, spending many a happy summer having exotic trees and plants planted and colorful birds imported. He later met his end by execution, even though close friends tried to give him an escape that he didn't accept because, get this, he felt shaving his beard to disguise himself would undermine his dignity if he were to be recaptured, which, I think that tells me plenty about his character. Oh, and from the exclusive beach bistro of the 5-star hotel, Daxa is usually just referred to as another, splash of green in an idyllic panorama of islands that tends to hang out. And if you're looking at the map, Daxa is pretty close, you could almost swim there. But the dotted lines around it kind of indicating sailing routes that really avoid it on purpose, skirting around to just avoid it no matter what. So kind of like Lokrum, in medieval times Daxa was first inhabited by monks, although later well-to-do travelers ignored it, preferring the larger, more accessible island to relax. In October of 1944, partisans were expelling pro-German Nazi forces from great swaths of what would become post-war Yugoslavia, and they arrived in Dubrovnik. Rounding up hundreds of sympathizers, including the city's mayor and local priests, they then took a certain number over to Daxa and executed them. Citizens were warned not to look for their loved ones in any case because there were no graves or burial plots. Dubrovnik simply got on with being part of Yugoslavia, and Daxa was never visited. If it was discussed, the talk turned to ghosts and the bad spirits that haunted the island. And in 2009, someone stumbled on the remains of several bodies. Forensic investigation revealed that there were 53 adult males, some carrying religious items associated with priesthood. A plot was created for reburials and a memorial erected. But even today, very few people visit Daxa, and it's abandoned and pretty much overgrown, so its secrets are hidden, and I'm good. In third place, we have Dead Man's Island. Even though it's kind of close to the public, Dead Man's Island is home to ghostly lore that is centuries old, so of course I had to talk about it. The list of spectral sightings and strange phenomena grows by the year, ranging from loud clanging noises that ring out in the dead of the night, to hurried footsteps that pace back and forth, or the unearthly moan of a young woman's sobs that fill the air. Tales of supernatural encounters stretch back more than a century, so the Squamish people call the place the Island of Dead Men. And a very long time ago, it said it was the site of a fierce battle. We're talking like northern and southern nations fought over claims to this plot of land. Now, the southern nation kidnapped 200 women, younglings, and elders from the north and held them captive. But when 200 young northern warriors traded themselves for the hostages' freedom, they were cut down on the spot. In the 1860s, the government offered to sell the land to one Samuel Brighouse. He declined the offer, but one of his partners, John Morton, decided why not. He rode to the island where he found hundreds of red cedar boxes scattered, amongst the foliage and perched in the upper branches of the tree, and quickly discovered they were fragile. When he reached up to touch one of them, it crumbled above his head, showering him with the bones of its long deceased inhabitant. Yeah, nope, that's when you run for the hills and say, no thanks. In the 1890s, a plague descended upon Vancouver, and Dead Man's Island was used as a pest house. So those who fell ill were sent to the island for quarantine. And if they got better, they were allowed to return home. If not, they never left. From 1899 to 1930, this island was home to a logging dispute. Local authorities and residents alike were kind of outraged by it, and at 6:30 a.m. on April 24th of 1899, when the developer headed out to the island with 30 men, then Mayor James Garden brought almost the entire police force with him to the island. When the developer attempted to cut down a tree, he and his men were arrested. Now, several similar episodes dotted the decades until the lease expired in 1930. In a 1909 incident, police occupied the island overnight to keep loggers at bay, and claimed they heard the rattling of dead man's bones and shrieking skeletons that threatened to haunt anyone who dared cut down trees on the island. The island is home to too many bodies to count. First Nations people, British merchant sailors, early pioneer residents of Moodyville, Hastings Sawmill and the Granite Town site, Canadian Pacific Railway workers who died during construction, victims of the Great Vancouver Fire of 1886, those who succumbed to smallpox, and possibly some of the squatters who made the island their home for many years. No. Absolutely not. That's way too many dead bodies for my liking. Way too many spirits and angry ghosties. Absolutely not. In second place, we have the Island of Plia. So the island is located in the lagoon near Venice and is famous for being one of the most haunted places in Italy. Tourists and locals alike are banned from this place, which was used for centuries as a place to exile the sick to prevent the spread of disease and, contain the mentally ill in an asylum built in the late 1800s. Yes, I'll backtrack and elaborate, and it's kind of similar to Dead Man's Island, but worse. In 1348, the bubonic plague arrived in Venice and Puglia, and like many other small islands at the time, it became a quarantine colony. The plague on average killed like 1 out of 3 Europeans, and fearing the spread of the disease, Venice exiled many of its symptom-bearing citizens there. So if you sneeze, off you go. At the island's center, the dead and those too sick to protest were burned on giant pyres, and now this includes the tens of thousands of citizens dying on the mainland. And those fires would burn once more in 1630 when the Black Death again swept through the city. The small island was used as a mass burial ground, and ashes from human remains make up as much as 50% of the island's soil. Grapes, I hope it's a good fertilizer. The deaths of nearly 160,000 people on the island have given it its nickname, the Island of Ghosts. Now, a doctor at that asylum that I mentioned a moment ago was known to have experimented on patients with, crude lobotomies, and he jumped from the bell tower in the 1930s after claiming he had been driven mad by ghosts. I wonder why. You torture people and they're gonna haunt you in the afterlife? Go figure. Decades later, nearby residents claim to still hear the bell, even though it was removed many years earlier. A report titled Haunted History states that some restoration work had started in recent history, but abruptly stopped without explanation. Okay, maybe this is one spot on today's list I don't want to visit. And in first place we have Bell Island. So time to travel to Newfoundland, Canada, but more specifically, the claustrophobic rocky mining tunnels. So there's a sense of miner spirit watching from every corner and crevice in this world, where the shadows flicker and the darkness, it's just heavy. So between when the mines opened in 1895 and the last mines closed in 1966, there were 106 fatalities and, triple those accidents. Miners lost arms, legs, some were left disfigured, while others died of lung disease. No big. Heritage Newfoundland and Labrador reported in 1938 that a methane gas explosion in the number 6 mine killed 2 men and injured several others. In the 1950s, with the implementation of more powerful and faster machinery, miners were often killed or wounded by runaway ore cars and falling debris, to name just a couple of disasters. At the start of the mining, men wore felt baseball hats with the only light flickering from the dull glow of a candle on top and a tin lamp burning seal oil perched on a rocky ledge. Safety improved by a smidgen around 1911 with the introduction of carbide lamps. And in 1935, miners wore battery-powered electric lights. But before all those great improvements, miners had no proper bathrooms or eating facilities, there was no warmth, and they worked 10 to 12-hour shifts for 6 days a week for 5 to 7 cents an hour, seeing the sunlight only on Sundays. Okay, that sounds like me, but I swear, I do take a day off. Boys as young as 10 worked alongside men as old as 80, picking ore off the conveyor belts, separating the chunks by size and discarding the waste. The site contained 4 major underground mines called number 2, 3, 4, and 6, which I've already mentioned, and they ran about, 3 to 5 miles in length. And then on the surface, there were 2 more mines called the number 1 and the number 5 that were mined out before, going underground. And what's left of the number 4 mine, folks have heard muffled disembodied whispering, felt an icy wind rush past, footsteps, and often there's a dreadful feeling of being watched. Now, the most unfriendly character to roam the area is not a long-dead miner entering or leaving the tunnels, but a vengeful white woman. So women back then were considered to bring bad luck if they entered a mine, or even walked onto the mining site. Yeah, I can vouch for the fact that miners, similar to actors, can be very superstitious people. Remember, I'm from a Canadian gold mining town myself. Now, the white woman began to appear in the 1940s. And remember how I mentioned the mines didn't have running water? Yeah, the men would collect buckets from a well. So one day when the men went to collect water, and to their horror, discovered the body of a young woman, dressed in all white, floating in the well. Her skin had turned an icy blue in, the post-mortem state, and shortly after removing the body from the well, mine number 4 became a hub of paranormal activity. Men that were heading home after a long shift would get fiercely attacked by this woman, and wounded, they got treated at the nearby hospital, and those events would happen until about the mid-1960s, after the discovery of the killer. Well, the turn of the 19th century dispelled many of the long-standing myths and legends that were once pretty common on the island. In some cases, they actually got replaced with all new supernatural horrors. Bell Island has been labeled the most haunted island in North America. So, moving forward, in the early 20th century up until the 1950s, the island had a blend of ethnicities. We're talking English, Irish, Scottish, German, and more. And they've all got their own superstitions as well. Before Newfoundland joined Canada as a province, it was a lawless place, filled with sailors, stowaways, misfits, and, the folklore got really mixed with the macabre. Wherever you found a piece of land, you planted your home, and there's a lot of things that happen that people still can't explain. What was I forgetting? Oh right, I almost forgot about the fairies. Once there was a man on Bell Island who actually disappeared for quite some time, and when he returned, he was totally different. He suddenly developed a serious speech impediment and walked hunched over with a cane in a jerky, unstable fashion. So the rumor was that the fairies took him. And hey, at the time, most of the community gossiped about this. According to locals, it's very common in old Newfoundland stories that if people have some kind of interaction with fairies, they are changed as a result. People in Newfoundland will also talk about a blast, where they will get an injury of some kind, they'll trespass on fairy ground and they'll be struck with the fairy arrow, and then they'll get a boil or a lump or something that's going to form on their body. And when that lump is cut open, things such as feathers and twigs are going to come out of that wound. And with what I know about fairies, this is officially the scariest curse on the list. They're very much something one does not mess with. Trust me.
At number 5, the Ohio State Reformatory. The Ohio State Reformatory, a haunting architectural marvel that carries within its walls the echoes of a troubled past. Constructed in the late 19th century, this imposing Victorian Gothic structure was initially intended to embody progressive correctional ideals. However, over time, it became synonymous synonymous with stories of despair, shuddering, and unexplained phenomena, solidifying its reputation as one of the most haunted places in the United States. The Reformatory's history is rife with tales of harsh conditions, overcrowding, and the struggles of those who were incarcerated within its confines. These factors, coupled with the tragic stories of inmates who lived and died there, have contributed to the pervasive sense of unease that envelops the site. Visitors often report strange occurrences, such as unexplained footsteps echoing through the empty halls, eerie whispers that seem to float on the air, and chilling cold spots that hint at otherworldly presences. In some cases, there have even been disappearances and killings, alluding to the dark spectral forces that inhabit the Reformatory. One of the most famous aspects of the Ohio State Reformatory is its appearance in the movie The Shawshank Redemption. While the film highlighted the Reformatory's grim atmosphere, its true history is far richer and more complex. The architecture itself tells a tale of a bygone era, with its intricate detailing and imposing structure standing as a stark contrast to the stories of suffering that unfolded within its walls. Guided tours and events at the Reformatory allow visitors to explore its various sections, from the imposing cell blocks to the eerie solitary confinement area, known as the Hole, creating an immersive experience that evokes a sense of timelessness. The stark contrast between the ornate exterior and the haunting interior serves as a poignant reminder of the complex and often troubling history that defines the Reformatory. While some may dismiss claims of paranormal activity as mere superstition, the stories and experiences recounted by those who have visited the Ohio State Reformatory are difficult to ignore. The combination of a somber history, decaying architecture, and the mysterious ambience that permeates the air makes for an unforgettable experience that lingers long after the visit is over. Number 4. Molly Stark Sanatorium. The former Molly Stark Hospital, located in Molly Stark Park in Ohio, is a haunting relic of a bygone era. Once a treatment center for tuberculosis patients, the decaying building exudes a ghoulish aura, with vines snaking over ancient brick, shattered windows, and faded stone. Closed for over 2 decades, the hospital's dilapidated state has attracted ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts, leading to the erection of a barbed wire fence to deter trespassers. Owned by the Stark County Park District, the property offers public tours to its exterior, revealing intricate architectural details and a fascinating history. The hospital, originally constructed in 1929 at a cost of around $1 million, treated tuberculosis patients until the 1970s, and later served as a mental health facility and a rehabilitation center for those suffering with addiction. The tour provides insights into the hospital's architectural flourishes, including a portico and stone-carved religious symbols, reflective of the faith that played a role in caring for those afflicted by tuberculosis. The hospital's conditions quickly began to decline in the mid-1970s, after reports of ghost sightings within the hospital. Patients and staff alike bore witness to the likes of victims of tuberculosis, despite the fact that treatment for the illness was invented 20 years prior. These now-deceased patients were known to disrupt medical examinations, cause mass hysteria among patients and staff, and even cause many disappearances within the hospital. The amount of distress these apparitions caused eventually led to the hospital's closure in 1995. Nowadays, the site's haunted reputation draws curiosity seekers, but the tour focused mostly on the building's history rather than the many ghosts that still scuffle about the old hospital. And number 3, South Base Island Lighthouse. Perched atop the rugged cliffs of South Base Island in Put-in Bay, the historic lighthouse stands as both a beacon of maritime history and a portal to a realm of ghostly legends. The South Base Island Lighthouse, with its iconic red brick tower and majestic views of Lake Erie, cast a haunting silhouette against the ever-changing skies, drawing visitors from far and wide who seek to unravel the mysteries that have enshrouded this hallowed site for decades. Built in 1897, the South Base Island Lighthouse served as a vital navigational aid for ships traversing the treacherous waters of Lake Erie. Its light guided sailors through storms and fog, ensuring safe passage to the shores. However, as time marched on and technology advanced, the lighthouse's significance diminished, eventually leading to its decommissioning in the mid-20th century. But as darkness descends upon the island, the lighthouse takes on an air of malevolence. The wind howls like the mournful wails of lost souls, while the crashing waves below create a symphony of despair. Those brave enough to step inside confront an unsettling stillness, punctuated only by the occasional creak of floorboards under an invisible, unrelenting force. Phantom shadows dance along the walls. There are ethereal forms casting an ominous dance that defies explanation. Visitors recount harrowing tales of icy fingers brushing against their skin, of ghostly whispers that worm their way into their minds, and of an overpowering sense of dread that lingers long after they've fled the premises. The lighthouse had to be shut down after several reports of it turning off at random times, or guiding sailors towards dangerous areas, despite being completely unmanned. One can only assume that this mischief was the work of the spirits that haunt the lighthouse. This forsaken lighthouse has earned its place among the most terrifying locales in Ohio, a reputation upheld by relentless tales of ghostly apparitions, unexplainable phenomena, and an atmosphere so saturated with maleficent energy that it leaves visitors trembling in its wake. Whether driven by morbid curiosity or a thirst for the macabre, those who dare to cross the threshold into the South Base Island Lighthouse do so at their own peril. For here, in the heart of the lighthouse's labyrinthine corridors, the boundary between the living and the spectral blurs, and the chilling embrace of the unknown reaches out to ensnare those who dare to seek it. And at number 2, Moonville Tunnel. Deep within the remote woods of southeastern Ohio lies a sinister enigma shrouded in darkness, the Moonville Tunnel. This desolate and haunted passage, long abandoned by the living, stands as a portal to a realm where reality intertwines with the supernatural, and where the unwary may find themselves vanishing into the void if they dare to tread too close. The Moonville Tunnel, a vestige of an era past, was once a vital conduit for a long-forgotten railway. Yet, as time eroded the tracks and decay seeped into its very stones, a chilling transformation occurred. Stories of ghastly apparitions and eerie encounters have swirled around the tunnel, like the mist that clings to its mouth. Tales whispered among locals with a mixture of dread and fascination. Daredevil adventurers who have ventured into the tunnel speak of an oppressive, tangible malevolence that envelops the air, an unrelenting presence that seems to watch, to wait, and to hunger for the unsuspecting. Perhaps the most sinister tale is that of the Moonville Tunnel's insatiable appetite for souls. It is said that if you step foot into the tunnel around 3 a.m., when the boundaries between worlds are at their thinnest, you may never step back out. Foolhardy wanderers who venture into its depths during the witching hour risk becoming mere specters themselves, forever trapped in a twilight realm of torment and despair. The tunnel's history is steeped in tragedy, adding to its ominous aura. Legends tell of a brakeman who met a grisly end beneath the wheels of an oncoming train, his anguished spirit now condemned to roam the dark expanse. Others speak of mournful phantom cries that pierce the silence, echoing the heart-wrenching despair of a long-lost soul. Visitors who dare to challenge the Moonville Tunnel's eerie reputation tread a perilous path, as the moonlight filters through the dense canopy, casting ghostly shadows upon the tunnel's yawning maw. A feeling of being watched intensifies. Footsteps echo with an eerie resonance, their sound swallowed by the blackness ahead. Time itself seems to warp, stretching and distorting reality as though beckoning the unwary to step beyond the veil. To approach the Moonville Tunnel is to court danger, to teeter on the precipice of the unknown. It is a place where the boundary between the living and the dead blurs, where the rules of our reality are subverted by forces beyond comprehension. As the wind whispers secrets and the very earth seems to hold its breath, those who venture too close may find themselves joining the ranks of the vanished, a chilling testament to the dark and untamed forces that linger within the haunted confines of Moonville Tunnel. Coming in at number 1, Franklin Castle. Franklin Castle, an imposing Victorian mansion nestled in the heart of Cleveland, Ohio, stands as an enigmatic edifice brimming with dark secrets and eerie tales that have earned it a reputation as one of the most haunted houses in America. With its intricate architecture, turrets, and ornate details, the castle's exterior belies the chilling stories that have swirled around it for generations. Built in the late 19th century by German immigrant and banker Hans Tiedemann, the Franklin Castle was intended to be a symbol of prosperity and opulence. However, as time passed, the mansion's grandeur began to fade, replaced by rumors of tragedy, scandal, and paranormal activity that would come to define its legacy. The Tiedemann family was plagued by a series of untimely deaths, including the passing of several youngsters and Tiedemann's wife. The pervasive aura of grief seemed to seep into the very walls of the castle, fostering an atmosphere of melancholy and despair. It is said that the spirits of the deceased still linger within its chambers, their presence felt by those who dare to venture inside. Over the years, reports of ghostly apparitions, disembodied voices, and unexplained phenomena have only added to the castle's haunted mystique. Visitors and paranormal enthusiasts alike have recounted chilling experiences, from encountering spectral figures that vanish into thin air to hearing whispers that seem to drift from empty rooms. Cold spots and sudden drops in temperature are often attributed to the presence of otherworldly entities. And of course, the few unlucky folks who, seemingly out of random, would receive the same curse as Tiedemann all those years ago. The castle's haunted reputation has been further fueled by the stories of secret passageways, hidden rooms, and a mysterious woman in black who is said to roam the halls. These elements, combined with the mansion's unsettling history, have led to countless investigations by ghost hunters and paranormal experts seeking to unlock its mysteries.
In 5th, he was accosted by this lady in white, and she was very pale, and she begged him for water. And originally he thought it was one of the castle guests, so he turned to obey. Before he remembered that he was, locked in and no visitor could possibly have entered. When he turned back to confront her, he found she had vanished. Now the same pale figure is seen to this day, and it is thought the longing for water suggests poisoning. Heck of a way to go, but let's move on to the Blue Boy, shall we? Also known as the Radium Boy, he's a phantom known to haunt the pink bedroom, my favorite color. His pitiful cries can be heard at the stroke of midnight, and he appears as an orb or a halo of blue light, often close to a passage leading to a tower. The glowing figure occasionally manifests itself as a little boy dressed in blue, ergo how the moniker came to be. This apparition has been linked to the bones of a little one found walled up in the castle, which were found during renovation work in the early 20th century. Remnants of moldering blue fabric were discovered along with the skeleton. Poor fellow. I hope he gets the chance to cross over someday. Well, we can't forget to mention the tragic Lady Mary Berkeley, who passed in 1719. She was the wife of Lord Grey of Wark and Chillingham, who abandoned her to run off with her sister, Henrietta, causing, quite the scandal. The heartbroken Lady Mary was left with her newborn, wandering the halls of the castle, longing for the return of her errant husband. He never returned, and she apparently never left. Visitors to the castle have reported the rustle of silk, accompanied by an unearthly chill, which has been interpreted as indication Lady Mary has passed by on her sad vigil. She is said to be buried just beyond the castle in the tiny medieval church of St. Peter's in the village of Chillingham. Less notable interactions take place in the chapel, beside the Great Hall, where the voices of two men are often heard talking. It is never possible to follow their words, and they stop talking if one makes serious efforts to trace them. So, who wants to spend a night there? Fine, I'll call up my close friends and beg them. In 3rd place, we have the London Asylum for the Insane. So in 1870, London introduced its first asylum, and as one of the first institutions to treat mental illness in Ontario, Canada, it was, revolutionary. Hey, within days, their 500 beds were full. So it was located just outside of the city center, and the asylum initially focused on compassionate care and moral therapy. Their intent was to treat the patient as a whole being, rather than, focusing on a single symptom. Patients would be bettered as members of society, fitting in with the community by keeping steady jobs and following strict social norms, thus, curing their mental illnesses. Now, while conforming to the ideals of conservative society sounds horrid to me, I do understand that at the time it was probably a safe move. The world is a lot more forgiving now of individuality and understanding of differences, even though we still have a long way to go. So doctors at the asylum also performed several experimental surgeries. In fact, Dr. Richard Maurice Buck, who believed, failed reproductive organs to be the source of mental illness or hysteria in women, executed routine hysterectomies. Moving into the 1930s, shock therapy was introduced to treat symptoms of schizophrenia by inducing seizures. Lobotomies were also completed between 1944 and 1967. While we don't know how many were performed in, London specifically, there are about 1,000 between these 23 years across Ontario. One reason that someone would be sent to the asylum includes sexual deviation. What is, shockingly expectant is that body self-love was identified as the root cause of a majority of mental illnesses. So Dr. Buck thought he had remedied this self-harm by inserting a metal wire into the foreskin of a man's penis so that the act would be too painful and uncomfortable. So what this doctor did not know is, that self-love is actually a positive action for sexual health and is not the cause of mental illness, as he would later discover after 11 failed attempts of reversing what he did. What am I forgetting? Feel like there's something I haven't mentioned yet. Oh, right. Ghosts. There was a tree at the main door which was dead and black in color, while vegetation was growing all around it, and that was the tree that patients ended their lives from. The chapel is known to be haunted, with the temperature inside always feeling ice cold, even though it might be sweltering hot outdoors, and the recreation building has also been known to be the home of many unknown ghosts. But the one ghost you want to avoid is that of the bad doctor himself, who passed away on the grounds in February of 1902 when he paused to gaze at the stars one winter's night and lost his balance and, died from the resulting head injury. It's alleged that he was pushed by the ghost of one of his patients who had died from his morbid experimentation, but sadly the mortality rate, like I mentioned before, was so high that we don't know which patient. In Hull Hospital. So it was built in 1530 and originally meant for residential use, but served as a hospital for American officers who were injured in World War I. It was used once more as a military hospital during World War II and has been used in a similar capacity ever since, but no more. In the 1980s, it was once again put to private use, but by the 1990s, a significant fire had rendered it uninhabitable. Time for the dark stuff. It's alleged that one of the male owners of the home sexually took advantage of and killed a young girl. Today, her presence has been reported by various people who were in the building. Many people claim to have seen the ghostly image appearing at exactly 4:30 a.m. since she's fond of standing at the end of staff members' beds in the middle of the night. Interesting that she chooses the 4 a.m. hour to appear, since 3 a.m. is usually the preferred time for spirits, since that's when the veil between our world and theirs is the thinnest. So this spirit has been blamed for the disembodied sound of sobbing around the building. The building is also said to have a resident gray lady, but information around her is a lot harder to find, so let me know in the comments if, there's any experts out there, because any ghostie with a missing story is super intriguing to me. In fourth place, we have the Trenton State Hospital, originally known as the New Jersey State Lunatic Asylum, later Trenton State, and now Trenton Psychiatric Hospital. It was the very first one founded on the Kirkbride Plan by activist Dorothea Dix, but it's more remembered for, its medical no-nos instead of its well-intentioned beginnings. Dr. Henry Cotton became the director of the hospital in 1907 and instituted treatments based on his own theories of mental illness. On the one hand, Henry, who had trained at Johns Hopkins under the eminent Swiss-born psychiatrist Adolf Meyer, had a very progressive attitude towards care for his patients. He did away with the mechanical restraints that so many other hospitals use to control patients, introduced occupational therapy, increased the staff, and ensured that the nurses would prevent violence against the patients, and instituted daily staff meetings about patient care. But Henry developed a dangerous theory about mental illness, one that turned his hospital into a house of horrors. After it was confirmed in 1913 that the spirocate that caused syphilis can cause the disease's psychiatric symptoms, Henry began to suspect that all mental illness was caused by bodily infections, and that the only way to cure the patient was to remove the offending infection. In 1917, he began removing his patients' teeth, even in cases where x-rays showed no evidence of infection. Ow! He soon moved on to the other body parts: gallbladder, stomachs, ovaries, testicles, tracts of colon, uteruses. Henry claimed a cure rate of 85%, but in reality his surgeries had an unconsciously high mortality rate, and he didn't always obtain consent from the patients or their family members, and in fact sometimes performed these removals despite their protests. And hey, if that isn't icky enough, he wasn't quiet at all about what he was doing. The crazy doctor published papers and gave presentations on his work. When Mayer, Henry's mentor, sent another psychiatrist to report on the operations at Trenton State, he initially suppressed the report, allowing Henry to continue his gruesome work. He remained at Trenton until 1930, 3 years before his death. Now, the tooth-pulling practice remained in place until 1960, and my mouth hurts thinking about it. Before I get nightmares, time to move on to the fun stuff. As for the ghosts themselves, they are thought to all be those of patients that died within the building, but the most well-known ghost is that of Dr. Henry himself, who has been seen wearing a white doctor's coat and walking down the corridor in the area outside his office. The most commonly reported phenomenon at the hospital is that of disembodied voices, mainly muffled screams and moans coming from distant rooms. Orbs can be caught throughout the building at any time of the day, with some having a strong pale blue glow to them. There are also tales of seeing the ghosts of patients with arms and legs missing, who have been seen in some of the rooms upon, somebody entering them, only to fade away after a few seconds. See, the ghosts of patients I'd love to see, but I feel like seeing Henry would terrify me for a while now that I know, what he did in his lifetime. A lovely example of why to not enable people who do bad things. In third place, we have the Vorgard Castle in Denmark. So in the northeastern Danish town of Dronninglund, Vorgard Castle is renowned for its dark past. The most famous tale tells the story of Ingeborg Skeel, who acquired the castle in 1578 and drowned its architect in the moat so that he could never design another building as beautiful as this one. Well then, that takes gatekeeping to a whole new level. Skeel was an enterprising and highly skilled businesswoman, and therefore despised by a large percentage of the local population. Ah yes, a woman in power scaring people. I'd love to say I'm shocked, but not really. If anything, I'm just impressed. The stories about her evil misdoings are many, and after her death in 1604, she haunted the castle to such an extent that a priest was called in to perform an exorcism and lay her spirit to rest in a nearby marsh. People today report seeing Skeel's cranky ghost wandering through the castle at night dressed in white. Oh, don't worry, there's more. In the northeastern tower room, there is a stain on the floor, which originates from someone having been killed in that spot. The residue of an innocent life source that has been shed and cannot be removed. The stain was all but forgotten for many years, but when the room was renovated in 1987, the year I was born, the stain reappeared as many years' varnish was sanded off, and no matter how much the floor is sanded, the stain always reappears after a few days. Also, in a display case at the castle lies the skin of a wild boar brought down in the castle grounds during the 18th century. As the wild boar was brought down on the border between Vorgard and Hunsland, a minor feud arose, resulting in a sharing of the spoils, and since this castle got the skin, you can guess how that was split. According to legend, the wild boar skin must never be removed from the grounds, or the entire castle will come crashing down to the ground. Alrighty, so keep all the minimalist interior designers away from the castle, and anyone who wants to burn animal furs. It's not worth such a great haunted home for. Oh, and I guess history and architecture as well. But you gotta keep the ghosties happy. In second place, we have the Topeka State Hospital. So according to the Topeka Capital Journal, a reporter visited the facility at some point during the early 20th century and saw a patient who had been strapped down for so long that his skin had begun to grow over his restraints. So according to my research, this would take many months, if not years, to do so. So I am shuddering. Other patients were chained up, well naked, for months at a time. For many residents at that time, however, life offered a different, similar sort of hell, even if they were unrestrained and unending boredom. Patients were given nothing to do, nothing to stimulate their minds, and so they sat in rocking chairs in the hallway all day, rocking and staring and doing nothing else. Thankfully, in 1948, Kansas Governor Frank Carlson, responding to reports of overcrowding and deplorable conditions, convened a panel to, study the problem. The state legislature ended up doubling the appropriations for mental hospitals, and the rocking chairs were removed from the hallway. However, the hospital lost its Medicare and Medicaid accreditation in 1988, and like so many hospitals, lost patients to community-based programs during the 1990s. In 1997, the year I was born, the hospital closed its doors for good. The ghosts that wander what's left of the hospital are those of former patients, which I know, I'm sounding like a broken record. Oh, there's a cemetery on the hospital grounds, which is, the final resting place of patients who died in the hospital. Only 16 of the 1,157 graves have headstones, and most of the souls are left nameless. Visitors to the hospital grounds report seeing orbs and hearing strange moans coming from the cemetery. Yeah, no thank you. In first place, we have Century Manor. So built in 1884 on the outskirts of Hamilton, Ontario, Century Manor was the second major structural component of the Hamilton Asylum for the Insane, an institution initially established for the treatment of alcoholics. Newspaper articles published in the late 19th and early 20th centuries documented at least 9 self-deaths committed in the building, as well as several attempts made by inmates who escaped the hospital. Century Manor was also the scene of several strange accidents and horrific crimes. One female patient fell to her death while attempting to, escape out a window using a rope made from bed sheets, while another had her skull crushed by a falling elevator. One particularly troublesome male inmate was allegedly slugged to death by orderlies, while another split open the head of the asylum's head baker with an axe. No biggie, right? Apparently the living conditions were so bad that in 1910, a former inmate wrote a letter to the Legislative Assembly of Ontario, stating that the place was an outrage to civilization. Allow me to read what he said. Wretched, vile torment is the order of the institutions. He had seen patients pounded, choked insensible time and time again until redness would run from their nostrils. Oh, I haven't even gotten to the most dramatic tale yet. In the early morning hours of August 11th on 1911, a fire mysteriously broke out on the building's top floor. Firefighters who battled the blaze said that 3 of the inmates they rescued from the burning building broke away from them and leapt back into the inferno. When the embers finally cooled, firefighters found 8 bodies amongst the ashes, including a paralytic who had burned to death in his cell, as well as 5 men huddled together in a small room, burnt to a crisp. Now, the historic building shut its doors for good in 1995 and has sat empty ever since, serving as a haunting reminder of Hamilton's dark and tragic history. And now that we've got the history out of the way, time to talk about the ghosties, my favorite part. Underneath the property of Century Manor lies a system of old tunnels. This first-hand account comes from Jeff Cooper, who was hired to guard the entire West 5th property overnight, and on one particular evening, he was making his rounds and ended up underground and inside the tunnels. He made a turn at one of the corners and found himself lost in a hallway with just one wooden door at the end. He heard voices coming from the other side of the door, so he walked up to it, quickly braced himself, took a few deep breaths, and swung the door open. There, sitting at a table in the middle of a small, dirty old room, were 2 women dressed in old-fashioned nurses' uniforms. They both slowly turned and stared at him directly in the eye, until one of them spoke up and calmly said to the other, "See? I told you he'd find us." The security guard was so frightened that he backed out of the room, slammed the door behind him, and caught his breath. He gathered his nerves a second time and slowly opened the door to a completely empty room. The nurses had disappeared from the room, with no other exits being apparent or visible. The ghosts of the men who lost their lives in the fire are also known to roam what's left of the establishment, so if any urban explorers smell smoke while they're there, don't say I didn't warn ya. And that brings us to the end of our time, and my heart truly goes out to anyone who suffered in those awful, awful places. Yeah, goodness gracious. While I do joke about borrowing a time machine on occasion, today was a good reminder of why I truly belong in my current time period, and how unpleasant history was.
Number Holiday Inn. In 1980, on Friday, September 10th, in the mid-1980s, Richard Ramirez, also referred to as the Night Stalker, stayed in the Cecil Hotel during a large part of his spree, claiming the lives of many in the area during his stay. Another killer from Australia also took up residence in the hotel, apparently due to hearing that Ramirez had once stayed there. Though the hotel was home to prolific killers, there are many deaths that have remained unsolved tragedies. In the mid to late 20th century, multiple guests were found in their rooms in upsetting states and unresponsive. Others were found in the same state outside the hotel. Having no cameras in the hotel at the time, people were hesitant to believe that these acts were committed by something of a different realm. But after security footage from Elisa Lam's last moments was released, people began to credit the paranormal for some of the past unsolved tragedies. Elisa Lam was a young Canadian student who stayed at the Cecil in 2013. In her last moments, there is a video footage of her in an elevator, frantically hiding and speaking to empty spaces, obviously terrified. Elisa's body was found in the water tank on top of the building 3 weeks after she had gone missing. Authorities ruled her death as accidental, but many believe that something much more sinister was the cause, citing the similarities between her tragic story and others from the past. In 2023, the hotel is now being renovated as an attempt to completely rebrand itself. But I'm not so sure the spirits left living there are going to be any more welcoming to the next generation of guests that stays in the hotel. Number 5, Langham, London. Built in 1865 with over 500 rooms, the Langham is an unsurprising host of paranormal activity. The strange activity was first brought to attention in 1965, exactly 100 years after its founding, by several guests who all claimed to see the same 5 ghosts on multiple different occasions. The most cited ghost was described as a German man of high social class wearing fine clothes. Guests say he often floats through walls and paintings, from room to room, lowering the temperature with merely his presence. Room 333 is considered the most haunted room in the hotel, believed to be the host of an extremely outgoing yet silent ghost. A reporter staying there with his colleagues was woken up in the dead of night to a bright, glowing light descending towards him. Upon gazing at it further, he was able to make out a Victorian woman, missing her legs and reaching her arms out to him. The reporter ran from his room to get his colleagues, who returned to the room and saw the fading image of the ghost. Guests who stay there continue to report odd occurrences, like taps turning on and off, lights flickering, and temperatures drastically rising and falling. The hotel continues to stay open and accept guests, and many people in search for interaction with the paranormal find themselves in the haunted halls of the Langham.
In 5th place, we have Pendle Hill, also known as Penhull. Pendle Hill is located in the Lancashire countryside near the villages of Burnley, Colne, Paddingham, Clitheroe, and Nelson. Pendle Hill is famous for George Fox's visitation, the Quaker movement leader in 1652, and the barometer experiments of Richard Towneley in 1661. I feel like I'm missing something else they were famous for. Let's see if I can get the gray matter in here working. Oh, right. It's home to a very famous witch trial. Locals to the area know very well the story of the 10 women executed for witchcraft at Pendle Hill in the 17th century, who, still haunt the area. The story of the Pendle Witches is an excellent example of a well-documented allegation of witchcraft. So this tale begins way back in the year 1612, when there was said to be a family of local peasants who lived in a vast limestone tower. However, the family was no ordinary family. These peasants had enormous powers and were reported to be in league with the devil. According to reports, the family made clay effigies out of teeth and human hair. In a coincidence that's going to surprise absolutely no one, local people died of various mysterious illnesses or great pains at the time. The milk in the area turned sour, and cattle died mysteriously as well. People were kind of afraid to go up that hill. A local magistrate, Roger Norwell, made the decision to arrest 2 people living in the tower. They were brought to Lancaster for trial, and 2 days later, the rest of the witches were arrested and also taken to Lancaster for trial. Out of the 12 folks on trial, 1 passed during the proceedings, another one was found not guilty, and the other 10 were, very much found guilty. On August 20th of 1612, all 10 accused witches went to the way of the rope necklace at Gallows Hill. The history of the witch trials has given the place an eerie atmosphere and several terrifying reports. Pendle Hill was featured on the show Most Haunted, during which several supernatural events are said to have taken place, including members of the show's crew being injured. Most of the ghostly activity is said to be out of spite from the witches, who continue to call Pendle Hill their cursed home. One tale of haunting in particular took place during a Ouija board experiment. Is my disdain showing yet? The stupidity was happening in the foundations of Malkin Tower, when a tooth suddenly landed on the center of the table. Now this caused everyone present to be extremely concerned, and after after having obviously checked to ensure that nobody in the group had lost a tooth, which was, definitely human, it left the folks involved in a quandary as to how it got there. The tooth was eventually identified as belonging to an adult of around 40 years of age and was in fact an old tooth. And if a league of ticked off witches wasn't enough ghosties for y'all, a Bronze Age burial site has been discovered at the hill's summit. Just a little bonus. In fourth place, we have Stirling, Scotland. This beautiful market town has played a pivotal role in the history of Scotland, along with playing host to multiple grisly stories and, unsettled spirits. The imposing hilltop, Stirling Castle, is home to several ghosts, and I'm struggling to decide who to talk about in detail. Probably one of the mysterious ladies. Oh, I know, the Green Lady. It is believed that she was a servant girl in the employ of Mary, Queen of Scots, and a very gifted one at that, who was blessed with the powers of foretelling, or second sight. So this maiden had a premonition that if her queen slept even one night within the ancient fortress, she would not live to see dawn. So she told her mistress of the fears, and thankfully, Mary listened and offered to allow the girl to watch over her as she slept, and, call for aid should any threat present itself. Through the long, dark night, our serving gal sat, bundled in a great soft chair guarding her beloved queen. Weary from a long journey, Mary fell into a deep slumber as soon as her head hit the pillow. And this girl too was kind of weary. She barred the door and, lighting a taper, sat by the bedside. There she sat for what seemed like an eternity, near hypnotized by the flickering of the taper's end. But, try as she might, she could not resist the weariness in her bones. Her limbs grew heavy, her eyelids heavier still, and decided, that maybe closing her eyes for a minute wouldn't hurt since she was so exhausted. Hey, we've all been there. In what seemed like no more than a few moments, she opened them again, blinking against the sudden brightness of the chamber. She, through bleary eyes, tried to call out, but found her throat so dry and realized that the tiny taper, set so carefully by the queen's cot, had fallen, lighting the bedclothes and tapestries on fire. Coughing, she darted from her chair, gathering the deeply sleeping queen in her arms, and carried her towards the door, barely managing to get her to safety before eventually passing from smoke inhalation. Sadly, her name has been forgotten. She is known only by the color of the gown she wore, the Green Lady. So visitors to Stirling should be mindful that their female phantoms have one thing in common. Yeah, I said phantoms, plural. It is said that whosoever looks even once into their eyes won't make it through the night. So if you notice a ruffled robe or a well-turned spectral heel as you're passing around, turn away, avert your gaze, because you don't want to risk your soul. Some say that Queen Mary herself haunts the castle, roaming the grounds in a pink dress. The Darnley Coffee House on Bow Street is also said to be haunted by a mischievous poltergeist, while the Old Town Jail is home to the spirit of the last man that went the way of the rope necklace on site. In third place, we have Edinburgh, Scotland. So the beautiful city of Edinburgh is well known for its ghostly activity. For starters, the South Bridge vaults are haunted by several different ghosts. During the Irish potato famine of 1845 to 47, thousands of Irish folks immigrated to Scotland seeking, survival. Forced into the vaults under the bridge, as many as 10 people lived in a single room. The conditions were poorer than the tenants, crowded and damp with barely any air circulation. And just like that, the area quickly became Edinburgh's red light district. Services of the night, please tell me you get what I'm referencing, gambling, and a thriving black market were commonplace in the vaults. By the late 19th century, the vaults were closed off for good in an effort to drive the seedy activity out from under Edinburgh's main thoroughfare. For decades, these vaults sat empty as their icky past slipped into obscurity. Obscurity that ended in 1998 when a local man crawled through a narrow passageway in one of his buildings and rediscovered the rooms underneath the bridge. Since then, the cavernous vaults of Southbridge have been open to the public, and the reports of ghosts have poured in. Honestly, what have I said about leaving hidden spaces that are blocked off be? Nothing good comes from opening them. Witnesses have claimed to feel cold gusts of air, hear voices, and to see and sense an intangible presence. Some ghosts are quite bold, like the, spectral youngling Jack, who likes to grab visitors' hands in the wine vaults. Just for funsies. While another more menacing presence is known as Mr. Boots. He's an unkept man that was named for his, tall footwear. He lurks in the back section of the vault and has been known to push and throw rocks at visitors. Some have claimed to hear his footsteps on the cobbles and his echoing voice cursing throughout the chambers. It's even rumored that in the 1820s, the infamous serial killers William Burke and William Hare lurked within the vaults, killing some of their 17 victims there, and storing the bodies in that same location until they were sold off for medical dissections. Visitors to Edinburgh Castle also frequently report sightings of apparitions. A young piper who disappeared without a trace hundreds of years ago can still be heard today, with the faint, haunting sound of a lost soul. As well as the story of the vanished piper, the dungeons are frequented by a headless drummer boy and a gaggle of French prisoners captured during the 7-Year War, who are regularly sighted in and around the castle. If you hear the bark of a dog in Edinburgh's Old Town, yet there's nothing there, it could be Bobby, a phantom Skye Terrier that is known to all in the city. The faithful hound spent 14 years guarding his master's grave until he finally passed away in 1872 and was buried in Greyfriars Kirkland, near his owner. People still hear his little bark near his grave. A small statue of Greyfriars Bobby is a popular landmark on the corner of Candlemaker Row, and it's good luck to rub Bobby's nose. Aw, here I am tempted to plan a trip, mainly to give a good ghost doggy a pet. Oh, almost forgot. Greyfriars is a graveyard that dates back to the 16th century and is the resting place of several infamous characters, but the most gruesome story is that of Bloody Mackenzie. Look, the interwebs really don't like when I say that word, so bear with me here. This wealthy lord was tasked with punishing hundreds of prisoners who refused to change their religion. Locals believe that the ghost of Mackenzie haunts the graveyard after his tomb was disturbed by a homeless man who broke into the graveyard at night. As soon as he laid hands on the tomb, the floor opened up beneath him and he dropped into a shallow grave containing plague victims. Since then, many other freaky episodes have taken place nearby. A woman was found unconscious with bruises around her neck, and many claim that it was Mackenzie's poltergeist, continuing his evil deeds in death as he did in life. No biggie. In second place, we have Canterbury, Kent. While this medieval city might be aesthetically stunning, it has quite the dark past. The ghosties here tend to be a little more spread out than other places, and have different tales, so let's have fun with some short and sweet descriptions. For starters, Canterbury Cathedral, a pilgrimage site for centuries, is the home to many restless spirits. Archbishop of Canterbury was famously and brutally killed by the King's Knights in 1170. Beckett's place of death has a large welded cross above it with 2 swords. His tomb can be found near the high altar, where his apparition still appears to visitors. Other cathedral ghosts include a nun and the ghost of Simon of Sudbury, who was the Archbishop of Canterbury from around 1375. Other paranormal hotspots in Canterbury include Tiny Tim's Tea Room, haunted by the spirits of 3 younglings whose remains were found within the walls during restoration. And hey, if you hang around Hawks Road, you might glimpse Abigail, a sad soul who frequents the area. Another spooky house in the area is the Bishop's Finger, which is located on St. Dunstan Street. In the 19th century, a housekeeper by the name of Ellen Bleen discovered that her employer, a priest, was having an affair with a younger woman. It is said that Ellen poisoned the pair with a meat pie and then vanished from the city. Shortly afterwards, it was discovered that she had been buried alive as her body was found nearby. Ellen is said to wander the streets and manifest herself in the Bishop's Finger every Friday. She's described as, plain-faced, larger lady in a long white skirt and a mob cap. There are more haunted places in Canterbury, but sadly, I don't have all the time I would like to go into more detail. In first place, we have the village of Pluckley. Included in the Guinness Book of Records as the most haunted place in Britain, the Kentish village of Pluckley's popularity amongst ghosts and ghouls had to make it the #1 spot on our list today. Wandering monks, decapitated highwaymen, and all manner of central casting spirits reside here, but special attention should be paid to the particularly gruesome story of the Pluckley watercress lady. Seen smoking a clay pipe and living on the banks of the river about a century ago, the woman would sell watercress to the locals and drink gin from a flask. My kind of lady. Falling asleep one evening, it is believed that her pipe scattered ashes onto her rags and she burned to death. So nowadays, a pink glowing specter can allegedly be spotted at the exact location where she went up in flames. Now, before someone asks why this place is scarier than the others on today's list, other ghosties who frequent in the town include the specter of the highwaymen who hide in a tree at Pinnock, a phantom coach and horses who pop up in several areas around the village, the ghost of a Romani woman who drowned in a stream, a miller who has been seen at Mill Hill, the hanging body of a schoolmaster in Dicky Bus's Lane, a colonel who hanged himself in Park Wood, a man smothered by a wall of clay who drowned at the brickworks, the Lady of Rose Court, who is said to have poisoned herself in despair over a love triangle, the White Lady, a young woman who was apparently buried inside 7 coffins and an oak sarcophagus, who haunts St. Nicholas's Church, but not to be confused with the Red Lady, regrettably a member of the family who haunts the churchyard of St. Nicholas's Church. Oh, and a small white dog has also been reported in the same location. Now, I don't know about y'all watching, but that's a few more ghosties than I'd like to see in a smaller town. And the fact that they like to roam and not stay in one spot, hard pass.
Starting off this list in our number 5 spot, we have the Ancient Ram Inn. Our journey into the spectral realm commences in the heart of the quaint yet mysterious English countryside where the Ancient Ram Inn stands. This timeless structure, steeped in history that spans more than a millennium, casts an imposing shadow that belies its innocent facade. The inn was erected in the 12th century atop a pagan burial ground, a detail that might send shivers down the spine of even the most seasoned paranormal enthusiasts. The Ancient Ram Inn is notorious among locals and ghost hunters alike, not merely for its haunted reputation, but for its resident entity, a fearsome demon known as the Incubus. The Incubus in mythology is a malevolent entity believed to prey on its victims during their sleep, and the tales that swirl around the inn seem to confirm its daunting presence. Chilling reports from those brave or foolhardy enough to spend a night within these ancient walls, including distressing experiences of being forcibly held down in bed, gripped by a terror that transcends the natural world. The fear is so tangible and intense it often leaves victims in a state of paralyzing dread, a sinister signature that seems to point irrefutably to the presence of the incubus. A multitude of theories have been postulated in an attempt to understand why such an entity would inhabit the ancient Ram Inn. Some are convinced it was summoned into our plane of existence through the dark, secretive rituals performed by druids centuries ago. Others attribute its presence to the numerous violent and untimely deaths that have tarnished the inn's history, the remnants of their terror and anguish creating a beacon for the incubus. Whether the origin of this terrifying presence is rooted in forgotten pagan rituals or the echoes of past violence, one fact remains undeniable. This demon has transformed the ancient Ram Inn into one of the most haunting and feared locations in Britain. A living testament to the supernatural, it draws the brave and the curious from all around the world, offering a chilling glimpse into the realms that lie beyond our understanding. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Monte Cristo Homestead. From the serene landscapes of England, our journey takes a detour to the southern hemisphere to the rugged terrains of Australia. Amidst the natural wonders of this continent, we unearth an unnerving destination, the Monte Cristo Homestead. Constructed in the Victorian era during the late 19th century, this manor is as exquisite as it is eerie, with a reputation that sends tremors of fear across the continent. In fact, the Monte Cristo Homestead is reputedly the most haunted house in all of Australia. But what imbues this seemingly serene house with such a chilling atmosphere? The answer lies in a terrifying, malevolent entity that seems to linger within its ancient walls. This demonic force, according to those who have encountered it, seems to draw its energy from the tragic past that befell the unfortunate Crawley family, the original inhabitants of the manor. Their lives were marked by a series of inexplicable tragedies, the echoes of which reverberate throughout the house to this day. This demon does not just passively exist within the homestead, instead it actively projects feelings of overwhelming despair and intense malice onto those who dare to step within its sphere of influence. This has led to a mounting number of unsettling reports from visitors and residents alike. Accounts include alarming apparitions appearing without warning, chilling echoes of cries that seem to emanate from unseen sources, and the inexplicable movement of objects that defy the laws of physics. Some have spoken of being watched by an invisible entity, feeling a menacing presence looming just out of sight. What makes the Monte Cristo Homestead a location of significant interest to paranormal enthusiasts worldwide is not just the presence of this demonic entity, but the alarming frequency and intensity of the encounters. Every creak in the floorboards, every whisper in the air, every fleeting shadow seems imbued with an otherworldly terror. This persistent, omnipresent sense of dread has etched the Monte Cristo Homestead deeply into the annals of haunted lore, making it a location that continues to unsettle even the bravest of hearts. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Chateau de Brissac. Leaving the rugged terrains of Australia, we embark on a journey across continents to the romantic heartland of France. Here, nestled amidst rolling vineyards, stands the regal Chateau de Brissac. At first glance, this 11th century castle captures the heart with its timeless elegance and architectural beauty, a testament to the opulence of the French aristocracy. However, behind its enchanting facade, it holds secrets that paint a hauntingly different picture. The true allure of the chateau for those drawn to the mysteries of the supernatural lies in its very grim past. The castle is haunted by a particularly terrifying apparition known as the Green Lady. Folklore suggests she is the ghost of a woman who met a tragic and treacherous end within these stone walls, betrayed and killed in a plot most foul. Visitors to the castle brave enough to explore its myriad of rooms often recount an eerie phenomenon. In the hushed stillness of the tower rooms, an ethereal green glow begins to manifest, growing in intensity before revealing the spectral form of the Green Lady. Her presence is often heralded by a bone-chilling moan that echoes through the ancient corridors, a lament from beyond the grave. What truly marks her as a demonic entity, however, are the terrifying details of her appearance. Her face, observers claim, features gaping dark holes in place of eyes and a grotesque visage that strays far from the norms of human ghosts and leans into the realm of the demonic. This unsettling description matches those of demons in many cultures, adding credence to the the claims of her otherworldly nature. Though her primary haunt is the tower, her mournful wails reverberate through the entire castle, a spectral siren song that sends a chill down the spine of even the bravest adventurers. Whether it's the captivating architecture, the lavish interiors, or the hair-raising tales of the Green Lady, Chateau de Brissac promises a visit you will remember for a lifetime. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Potosi Mines. Setting sail from the haunted shores of France, we cross the Atlantic, navigating toward the vibrant yet mystic landscapes of South America. Our chilling expedition brings us to Bolivia, home to the infamous Potosi Mines. Known as one of the highest cities in the world, Potosi has a frightful reputation that far surpasses its impressive altitude. These mines have seen the rise and fall of empires, beginning with the Spanish conquest. Since then, they have witnessed a horrendous tally of human lives lost, an estimate that reaches a staggering 8 million souls. This grim history is not just a tale of human endurance and exploitation, but it's believed to have given birth to a malevolent presence known as El Tío. El Tío, or the Uncle, is a demonic entity believed to rule over the dark, oppressive underworld of the mines. He is no mere ghostly apparition, but a potent force that commands respect and fear in equal measure. Legend has it that he was born from the anguished cries of the countless miners who met their untimely demise within these gloomy shafts. Understanding the perilous power that El Tío holds, miners have adopted a unique practice. They make regular offerings to this demon, including cigarettes, cocoa leaves, and even splashes of strong liquor, in an attempt to appease him and prevent his wrath from falling upon them. This ritualistic respect paid to El Tío emphasizes the terror that his presence instills in the hearts of those who dare to enter his dominion. Yet, despite these attempts at appeasement, miners and visitors alike continue to report spine-chilling experiences within the depths of the mine. They speak of an overwhelming sensation of being watched by unseen eyes, a cold touch brushing against their skin in the pitch-black tunnels, and the unsettling sound of guttural growls echoing from the deep. These terrifying encounters, coupled with the historical atrocities that occurred within the Potosi Mines, have resulted in an undeniably haunted location. It stands as a stark reminder of the balance between our world and the supernatural, a boundary that, in places like these, seems perilously thin. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have Zunantunich. As we bid adieu to the haunting echoes of the Potosi Mines, we venture further into the heart of South America. Our next destination transports us to a place where the past and the present converge in a symphony of ancient wonders and spectral tales, the mesmerizing Zunantunich in Belize. Nestled deep within the verdant expanse of Belize's jungle, less than a mile from the Guatemalan border, this ancient Maya ruin stands as a testament to a civilization long lost in the annals of time. Having laid undisturbed for over 1,000 years, Zunantunich found its way back to the world's attention in the 1890s. Since its modern discovery, Zunantunich has taken on multiple roles. It has emerged as an essential hub for archaeologists seeking to unravel the mysteries of the past, a prized gem for tourists who are drawn to its undeniable allure, and perhaps most intriguingly, a hotspot for those interested by the supernatural. The haunting legend of Zunantunich revolves around the spectral figure of a woman known as the Stone Lady. With her flowing black hair and glowing red eyes that seem to pierce the veil of reality, she is a sight to chill the blood. It is said that she first made her spectral presence known to one of the first research teams to explore the ruins in 1893. Since her initial sighting, the Stone Lady has frequently been observed in the vicinity of the tallest building complex in the ruins, aptly named El Castillo. Her ghostly figure, bathed in ethereal moonlight, is a sight that has left an indelible impression on those fortunate, or unfortunate enough to cross her path. Despite the countless sightings and eerie tales, the exact origins of the Stone Lady remain shrouded in mystery. Given the extensive history of the site, theories about her identity are as numerous as they are fascinating. Many postulate that she might have been a part of a ritual sacrifice, a spiritual practice commonly performed by the ancient Maya civilization. Whether she is the restless spirit of a sacrificed soul or a guardian of these ancient ruins, the tale of the Stone Lady adds a very intriguing layer to the rich tapestry that is Zunantunich. As you traverse these hauntingly beautiful ruins, you might feel a pair of red eyes watching you from the shadows, reminding you of the mystic charm that continues to shroud this remarkable place.
Number 5. The John Zaffis Museum. For someone like John Zaffis, opening a haunted museum was always in the cards. It was practically destiny. Few people can claim to come from a legacy of haunted museums, but Zaffis can, since he's the nephew of Ed and Lorraine Warren, America's most famous and oftentimes controversial demonologists. Growing up with a large fondness for his aunt and uncle's work, Zaffis developed a love of the paranormal from an early age and saw fit to try and carry on his relatives' work after their passing, opening his own collection of haunted relics the same way that the Warrens did. And what a collection of weird relics Zaffis has picked up. I'll shout out a couple of the cooler ones. The highlight for me has got to be this sword that was used to conjure black magic, and the sword is in like all of the promotional imagery, so it's gotta be pretty good. Check out this photo of Zaffis where he looks like a dark wizard who's also a fantasy author. Among the blade are things like a cast iron skull that was used in occult rituals, plenty of haunted dolls and idols, an ornate elk skull thought to be used in something evil, and loads more. Zaffis does point out on the website in the frequently asked questions section not to worry too much about being exposed to this stuff, as everything that's brought into the collection is blessed before taking residence. Although they do make a small warning on the website that there is a teeny tiny small chance that any residual evil might attach to you in the museum. So I don't know, make sure to wash your hands with hand sanitizer or holy water on the way out. I can't not include this, by the way, but the website also states that if Zaffis believes personally that any of the items in the museum have become too evil or too haunted to remain safe for public display, he throws it into an unspecified body of water. So if you're looking to start a collection of slightly used haunted relics on the cheap, I'd just check out the surrounding bodies of water to the museum. Now unfortunately, John Zaffis' museum is currently closed. Hey, this list was about ones that had to be abandoned, right? Can't come as too much of a surprise. But for those who are hoping to get a good up-close personal look at these cursed relics, Zaffis says he's been searching for a new location for the collection. Hopefully somewhere with some good ventilation, you know, really let all that evil air flow. And hey, if you're looking for more videos about haunted museums, haunted objects, haunted dolls, haunted everything really, we've got all more of that in spades. So stay subscribed to Top 5 Scary, keep the screams coming all night long. Let's keep going. Number 4. The Museum of Medieval Torture Instruments. Pack up the whole family and make sure to stop by at the gift shop for the Museum of Medieval Torture Instruments. Don't worry, there's something for everybody here to enjoy. Make sure you take home the miniature guillotine. One quick look at their website is particularly illuminating. Our main product is emotion, boldly proclaimed as their slogan. Yeah, well, agonizing pain is definitely an emotion, so I can't disagree there. The Museum of Medieval Torture Instruments really is exactly what it says on the tin. It's a massive collection of real historical relics and replicas serving to highlight some of the most disgustingly creative works of engineering ever invented. The kind of stuff that would make Jigsaw and his funny little puppet blush with anticipation. The museum's goal is to remind us just how truly unimaginably cruel human beings are capable of being to each other, and the lengths to which we will go to attain such horrid ambitions. The phrase, "those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it," comes up a whole lot on the museum's frequently asked questions page on the website, which is good. So come, learn a bit from such classics like the Rack or the Brazen Bull, so you don't accidentally end up repeating those. I don't think I can even possibly describe what either of those horrifying things do without getting this channel permanently flagged. So if you're curious, maybe take the worst Google trip of your life, or go up and visit the Museum of Medieval Torture Instruments. They've got locations all over the states for your pleasure, and there's even one in Europe, but I'm pretty sure that's a different one. The one I'm talking about right now is the American one. The one in Chicago even offers a ghost hunting tour, as some guests believe there are residual spirits tied to some of the more grisly equipment kept in the dungeons. Guests are invited to spend the night on their own accord or with the safety of a tour guide to try and uncover any of the spirits that are said to be still living there, including an old executioner named Thomas who loves his work so much he just never left. Sheesh. Nearly 1,000 years and he still doesn't take a day off. Some people just love to have their nose to the grindstone, or to forcefully shove someone else's face into the grindstone. To each their own. Number 3. The Bannockburn Battlefield. Our next entry on the list today is in Scotland, near the village of Stirling, and it's the Bannockburn Battlefield. A site of great historical significance for Scotland due to the Battle of, well, wouldn't you guess it, Bannockburn. The forces of King Robert of Scotland and King Edward II of England clashed, leading to a huge loss for the English, as 11,000 of their knights were cut down in battle. Now, this battlefield may not be as outright haunted as some of the other locations I've talked about so far, but the locals still say to keep your eyes peeled for spirits. Kind of like the drummer boy, there's a legend of a ghostly piper who is said to haunt this battlefield, and that he appears at dusk playing his pipes and leading an invisible army across the field. Some witnesses claim that they can hear a faint bagpipe sound or even see a spectral figure dressed in traditional Scottish attire. He's forever marching with his troops, and let me just say, I don't think I could imagine anything half as haunting as a ghostly bagpipe that's playing forever. Imagine being forced to play the bagpipes for all of eternity. That's worse than any hell could conjure. Visitors to Bannockburn Battlefield also report seeing ghostly figures dressed in armor. They are described as being transparent or glowing and are believed to, well, be the spirits of knights who fell in battle. Witnesses have described seeing these apparitions while walking near monuments and memorials dedicated to battle, and claim they can even hear the echoes of it, clanging of steel, and let's be real, probably still playing those bagpipes louder than anything you can hear. I can't imagine how annoying a ghost bagpipe player is, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get over that. The Mutter Museum. Mutter is the German word for mother. That's your fact for today, so you can tell your Mutter that you learned something from this video. Well, this isn't a museum for moms or about moms, although they're more than welcome to come. The Mutter Museum in Philadelphia isn't quite like the other museums on this list. It's not particularly known for being paranormal or haunted, but rather it's a collection of medical oddities and curios all arranged behind cabinets in a very clean, professional manner. It's not known for vengeful spirits or anything walking the halls, but rather just home to an incredible amount of very creepy things in jars. Every picture of the place looks like something out of a mad scientist's lab, a background of a B horror movie set, that one weird place from that one Harry Potter movie, maybe I'm remembering that wrong. Amputated limbs float in jars next to organs, fetuses from all sorts of animals you can imagine, and more bones than you could possibly shake a femur at. They got skulls of all kinds. They got skulls for days. They got an entire wall dedicated solely to the skulls of criminals, and all sorts of broken skulls in disarray, eaten by tumors or other lovely diseases. If you're looking for skulls, they have got skulls. They've got a collection of famous remnants, Albert Einstein's brain, if you want to see if some of that rubs off on you. Grover Cleveland's famous tumor. Well, we all love Grover Cleveland's tumor. Pack the whole car up. Let's go see that. You know, fun stuff. Now, guests who visit the Mutter Museum do pretty frequently complain of feeling dizzy and uneasy while wandering through the collection, but whether or not that's because of some poltergeist or spiritual influence, or because you're wandering through a 6,000 square foot room looking at hundreds of brains, bones, and disembodied organs in jars, is up for some debate. I know just reading about this thing already makes me feel kind of squeamish, makes my stomach feel all churny. I wonder if they have a little cafe in this one, like most museums have. You think anybody's eating there? And number 1, the Museum of Death. The Museum of Death. Well, I wonder what sort of topics they enjoy covering at the Museum of Death. I bet they have an absolutely illuminating look at pre-Raphaelite art of the late 19th to early 20th centuries. They don't? What? No, at the Museum of Death, opened in Hollywood in 1995, which was opened by a married couple with the intention to make people happy to be alive. Whew. How do they accomplish this? Do they show you pictures of whiskers on kittens and raindrops on roses? No, of course not. It's a collection of everything to do with death. Bones, skulls, coffins, ancient mortician's tools, executioner's equipment, and a whole lot more. Amusingly, the owners have said their goal is not to scare anyone with this museum. That's not what their museum is about. Now sure, they play videos of autopsies and they have footage and imagery from incredibly grisly and stomach-churning real-life true crime cases like artifacts from Charles Manson's family or some of Jeffrey Dahmer's personal effects, but they don't want to scare you. The museum is there to show death in its brutal, unedited honesty. The owners themselves describe it as a commemoration of life. And I gotta be honest, I'm making it sound worse than it is, but it definitely does sound interesting. And the grimmest parts of me are definitely more than a little curious to check it out in that morbid sort of way, because it sounds cool. Probably a great date spot to take a goth girl, I bet. The museum does kind of embrace its sort of twisted reputation and really runs with it. It hosts Black Dahlia costume contests where guests are judged on who's got the best post-mortem Black Dahlia costume, which is something. It's not thought to be as haunted as some of the other places on this list, but it does really bring out some visceral reactions in people. Apparently, it's not too uncommon for guests to demand to leave early or to outright faint while walking through the museum. The owners refer to these cases as falling down ovations, which is a very funny turn of a phrase. Now, sadly, if you're listening to all of this and you're already pre-buying tickets for your next trip to LA, sadly, the museum is currently currently closed down. They are reopening though. They've also got a museum in New Orleans, since their collection of macabre knickknacks is so large it couldn't be contained to just one spot. When it reopens, I recommend you get out as soon as you can. It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And that's all for this video, my little ghouls and goblins. Thanks so much for watching. I've been Taylor. Creep on creeping on, and I'll see you in the next one.